like. That's a very lot of work. I'm gonna get a. Target.
How many people that?
Exactly.
Good, you do anything, we should go on like Apple, the language.
Okay.
Ready if you're in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, I'll open up this planning board hearing for the town of Maynard. The time is 6:33 PM and the date is February 14th, 2023. We have all 5 members here present. This meeting is being recorded online. It's also a hybrid meeting, meaning that members of the community can participate here downtown at Town Hall or online through the Zoom link. Let's skip to item 3. Oh, we have a new agenda, so I guess it's item 3.1. 25 Nason Street. This will reopen the hearing for the special permit for 25 Nason Street on behalf of Sugarloaf. I didn't put a lot of thought to this, Bill. Should I, do you want to give a preamble to take us to where we were last time and where we are now?
Sure.
And then turn it over to the team, maybe?
Yeah, I think that would probably be best, yeah. Just to refresh the board, we had at our last meeting, there were a few updates that needed to be made to the application and the justification statement. Additionally, we had some the board would want to see some tweaks on the site plan itself. The applicant has worked, met with staff at least once or twice. And so we've made some adjustments, I think, reflecting what the board was looking for. I'll let I think that's pretty much it. We discussed some of the DOD criteria and how the applicant was going to strive to meet the obligation there. And we had some good meetings with DPW and that I think turn it over to the applicant. I think it's pretty much where we're at.
Is that okay, Tim?
Yeah, I think that is okay. Thank you.
Shall I stand?
I don't think I need, should you want me to drive, Julian? There's not a lot. I mean, there's a few things we could probably refer to and happy to do so. Questions merit it. I think the first thing to mention is we have had a very small change, but not insignificant to the scheme itself. There, you may recall there was some conversation last time about the relationship of a new door on the east or basin oriented facade in relation to an existing door. We have since learned a little bit more about the structure and potential opportunity for circulation in that building and reconfigured our scheme such that we do not need to add that door. And that was the only proposed change to the exterior, and the exterior has gone from a tiny change to really none at all. With the exception of the kind of fresh coat of paint. As Bill said, we did quite a bit of back and forth. I think, have you all had a chance to look at the updated peer review and other kind of staff review notes? We added sort of color coding for clarity. Our earlier replies to peer review were in blue. We've added additional notes in green to reflect changes. Also, our application was revised in 8 or 10 spots where we added some language and corrected and made some of the I think made it a little more apparent and removed some of the potential confusion over the ways the proposal has evolved over time. In our justification statement, we felt that in just, I think that the only criteria in terms of DOD that we felt like we were absolutely at swing and miss on, and that is access or views of the river. In many of the others, we felt like we we score at least a little bit of a point, even if it doesn't rise to the level of where the criteria specified something like substantial improvement. You know, in a case of, say, we're arguing that our inclusion of trees makes some improvement to, you know, stormwater. Is it substantial? I wouldn't guess so, but you guys can. But we feel like we're kind of on the board there and meeting the standard of substantial in, you know, probably 3 or 4 of those other criteria, and certainly at least the one that's required. The bit from our standpoint that is that required the kind of most back and forth and remains in this there's a couple of different ways to quantify our kind of mitigation efforts. From our standpoint, the things that we're interested in contributing as a part of the application include 2 trees as a contribution to the downtown arboretum, ultimately to the DPW. And that would be the tree itself, the tree well, the kind of what's the terminology for that, forget the language, the landscape architecture language is, you know, new improved dirt, soil amendment, I think is what it is. So those 2, the addition of, the replacement of an existing on-street parking space immediately in front of Sugarloaf with a handicap space. It's our understanding that the opportunity for that to strictly meet ADA requirement is not quite there. But our assertion is that given the relatively small number of handicap parking spaces, certainly the relatively small number of on-street handicap parking spaces, that would be a net improvement. In addition to that, we would like to offer the north flank of the building to the, I call it the Maynard, the Canvas Committee. I understand that committee isn't exactly an official thing and is comprised mostly of Eric Hansen, but for the recent mural that the cultural council has caused to be executed, Eric kind of headed up that process through the cultural council. So we would offer the space to be made available to them for that program, and we would make a contribution, cash contribution of $3,000 for their fundraising effort. We understand that the cost could be $20,000. So here's the variable in quantification. We know exactly what the contribution of $3,000 is worth. We have pretty good intel from Justin that the cost of the conversion of the on-street space would be about $1,000. And we have cost information about the trees that exists on a per tree, a per unit, anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000. So for that reason, it seems important to be talking instead of those items about the overall dollar contribution. That was a subject of some, you know, we spent probably 10 minutes on that in our most recent staff call. And my understanding is that we arrived at a range between $10,000 and $12,000. At least 10, not to exceed 12. So the mix of,
That's for the trees you're speaking of?
nope, that's for the mitigation. So if the tree the estimate per tree is anywhere from 3 to 10. Our notion is for the 3 to 10, our notion is to contribute to. If they're really 3 per, then we can do the 2 trees, the handicap space, and the $3,000 for the mural. If they're really 10 each, then we do 1 tree and maybe 2 of 3 contributions to the mural. So, so we would ask that the, somehow that, what we're buying. It seems like the strategy, you guys will sort it out, but our sense is we kind of agree to the menu and agree to the price. And, once we're actually sitting down at the restaurant, we know what the real cost of these things are. As long as we pick from the approved menu, then we'll be satisfying the requirements. So anyway, I hope that doesn't confuse things more than it clarifies, but I think from our standpoint, that's everything.
If I could turn it over to staff, my understanding and following along with, I think a good amount of this, I saw a lot of good work that was put in to understand a lot of these details. Is there anything else that we can add to help the board understand the level of I just want to, because what I saw was a lot of good work to try to come to these numbers in good agreement. So maybe just go through this with the trees. We've coordinated with DPW. That's correct.
Yes.
And it's, and I assume that when what Tim was mentioning, that aligns with DPW sort of perspective on this.
Yes, DPW is supportive of increasing the tree canopy in this case, but having the flexibility. I guess one thing that we should emphasize that these are new wells that are gonna be created. They're not, so it's, I'm not sure exactly where the ideal location is going to be, but certainly in the immediate vicinity. So that was considered appropriate, and additionally, it was roughly equivalent to what other applicants have contributed. And one thing is, I think it's important to emphasize here is that any business that's requesting a special permit in the downtown overlay district, it is not business unique. Any business is required to contribute to DOD and make an improvement to it. And because of that, it's given us some more flexibility because it's not applied to one business specifically. But it also gives us sort of a portion of what, what we would typically request or what we would refer to as earning your place in the DOD. But yes, the DPW, we coordinated with them, and the tree committee came up, and to be clear, the tree committee is under DPW. So they'll be consulted, but DPW will be the coordinating entity for the trees.
So what's the suggestion for that condition?
Yeah, so can I add to those items?
It's 8,000 to be used for 2 trees and new tree wells, and if that's what it is, I would also want to sunset on that, because if we don't do anything with it, we should give it back to us.
Yeah, so look at the staff report, you'll see that in proposed conditions. Oh, it's the wrong staff report. It's right on my computer.
And yeah, I do want to get to the staff report. I just want to make sure we.
You got it.
Yeah. I want to make sure we understand the item. Sorry, Julia, to cut you off.
No, like we talked about the handicap and the.
Yes, exactly. So I had concerns that putting a handicap spot that was not completely ADA compliant. I wasn't sure if that was the best approach or even allowed, but after talking with a number of town staff and others, the ADA commission and the ADA commission and various town staff, it's a common practice for town to mark a handicap spot, even if it's not fully ADA compliant, meaning it doesn't have, and I don't know all the details here, but doesn't have the correct widths from the doorways and stuff. So my concerns are alleviated about that handicap spot, and I'm okay with that occurring. And then, so that's trees, that's handicap. And sorry, mural. Mural is a little more challenging from my perspective, because even though I love the idea, it's hard for me to know how we can codify that in a decision, because we don't necessarily have control over the entity itself where funds would go to. So if those, like for the tree plantings, the funds go to DPW, there's But, oh, sorry, they get paid for by the applicant.
Yeah.
Okay,
They physically install, there's no transaction.
for direction BTPW.
Correct.
But it doesn't have the same oversight mechanism for the organization that was mentioned, because they're not a town organization, are they?
The cultural council is,
Yeah, the cultural council.
In my opinion, if the applicant is willing to give permission to the cultural council to organize the painting of a mural on that wall, in my mind, I know I've worked with the cultural council. I feel like that's an appropriate, responsibility being put on them to move forward with it, either with the funds if they're there or not, depending on the trees and all that stuff, to go ahead and with their usual process that they have used for other murals in town, which I have been aware of, and I feel like it.
Yeah, our concern is that, so, when it comes to the town accepting gifts such as that, it's complex. And so there's some disagreement and, some concerns about trying to actually accept money and what funds that will go into and all of these types of things. So, when it comes to like saying that that $3,000 will be accepted, like we can't accept the money because we don't know what fund that would go into.
Besides the money, what about just the use of the wall? Is that allowable?
Yeah,
Okay.
if there's no money transaction, and that's why the trees are the way they are, because
The
They
use of
have
the
to
wall
hire.
is a contribution.
yeah,
Well, we don't know if the wall will be used, but get back the money, it's like, well, figure it out. Cause if somebody wants to give you $3,000, put it in the cultural council account,
Yeah, I
and you're
think,
done.
yeah, but
It is.
yeah, but I think what Bill says is, I think, I feel confident that the mechanism now is changing on the accepting funds. I think it could be worded so that it can be done. One thing that's clear is that any funds that are given to the town are accepted by the select board.
Okay.
So I'm confident we could come up with something that would be
Language that would allow. them to-
right, but Julia's right, we got.
it's not for this one.
Right,
Just
that-
right,
yeah.
and that would be the way to do it, and but Bill makes a good point, yeah, it could.
So behind the scenes, I asked if we could set up this fund that can essentially be used. And there's still disagreement between council and accounting, so there's just some challenges to get agreement on it. It's not gonna happen in time for this decision, so we're just going to move along.
Downtown overlay district fund in general is what we want.
So anyway, those are my thoughts. I'm very supportive of these items in general. Any questions, comments from the board before we go to the staff recommendations and the proposed conditions?
Are we talking about the specification statement reference to the bicycle rack? Which, I don't know, it's weird, it just seems like they're allowing the town to keep the town bike rack. I don't really understand that being cited as a justification.
Well, I think similar to the walk, the driving access into the basin. It's a re-upping, right, of permission for the town to be, for the citizens or whatever to be using their land for that purpose.
It's not on there, like.
I think something that's important is to focus on what's gonna be in the conditions and not as much what's gonna be in the application.
I'm focused on the application justification statement because that's what they redid and that's the new information they're presenting. And I'm trying to figure out why that mentioned.
So your question, Bill, if I understand it, is why, how is that a benefit if it's on town property?
Yeah,
Yeah, I see it.
I also don't think it's needed. For me to consider this applicant aligned with our criteria. So I'm fine with just not talking about bike racks since they're already on the town property.
Right, you're talking about the one that's on the parking meter.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they talked about. I didn't.
Is that correct, Tim? Are we talking about a bike rack on the town property on the meter?
Yeah, they call them hitch post
probably 3, 4, 5 years ago, Billy probably had to do with this. We got a bunch in town there. It's a kind of sleeve that goes over.
Yeah.
The existing standard. There's one there today, and we're just sort of making note. I don't think we're trying to convince anybody that that's some massive gift from us to the town. It was sort of in a category where we had previously a different answer, and we wanted to make clear that the earlier answer about a bike rack is now evolved to be, our automobile transportation alternatives to the town. Addressed by this hit post. Other thoughts?
Yeah, the reference to justification on the criteria for potential fiscal impact. It has a reference of paying a community impact fee of 3% gross sales each quarter, but that's no longer allowed. So are they saying regardless, they're gonna give us the equivalent of that? As a condition for this permit?
So our host community agreement with the town requires us to pay 3% of gross sales as part of our host community agreement with them.
Yeah, but you realize state law just invalidated all those,
It
right?
still exists, but only up to 7 years now. And you can't do it after.
No.
And the idea is that the most it can be is
I'm
3.
referencing the reference to percentage of gross sales has been specifically disallowed.
Are you talking about the host community agreement or gross sales?
I'm
local
talking
tax.
about the host agreement. You cannot have the impact fee based on a gross of the sales.
The,
Percent of the sales.
the revision says that it can be up to 3%, but the town must prove that the funds used go to what happened with the cannabis retail store. So
It can be the equivalent of that, but it can't be based on that. But the way it's worded here is you seem to be stating you are guaranteeing 3% of gross sales. But that's not in fact true, right?
under our host community agreement, it is, but the statute changed on August 10th of this year. Now the question is how cities and towns look at that, because they argue that city and town can still contract with somebody and still accomplish the same thing. So there's some issues as to the new statutory language as to how cities and towns are going to handle that. I would argue that under the new language, that a town can charge up to 3%, but they have to prove that amount of money is needed in order to, in order to fund whatever it takes for a cannabis retail store to operate in the town of Maine. With that being said, in agreement with the town of Maine, we agree to pay them 3%, and there's no question as to what the funds are used for. But the statute did change, and that's still up for debate on how it's gonna play out in the future.
The statute changed such that it's basically a reimbursement cost. So I'm querying this because it's, saying it's gonna be this financial benefit for the town, when in fact it's just a reimbursement cost. That's all we're allowed to do.
Maybe
I
expand.
agree with you on what you're saying. As the original statute along with the amendment said that it was only supposed to be 3% to cover you, up to 3% to cover your cost. That's not what occurred in the host community agreements.
Absolutely agree with that.
And the benefit to the town is not just the 3% on the HCA, but the 3% local sales tax of a cannabis business operating in the town, as well as if my client conducts a courier service out of there and delivers outside of the town, the 3% sales tax is based on the sale made in Maine, not the delivery of cannabis to Acton. So the
All right,
benefit,
well, wait a minute, back up. 2 points there, one about the sales tax, and get to the but. You just said that this operation is gonna be a delivery operation?
a courier business has the ability to contract with cannabis retail stores to do home delivery. That's a separate and distinct license. So if a cannabis retail store in Maine were contract with a courier business to deliver cannabis on behalf of the cannabis retail store, if that cannabis retail store delivers to Acton, the tax is based on the sale in Maine, not the sale in Acton.
So just
So
for
that
this,
applies to all 3 stores in
So
May.
are you saying that if this application is approved, should that opportunity arise, it will be allowed without further approval?
I don't see anything in any of the decisions that you guys made addressing the question of delivery. I have to go back and read the zoning ordinance, and I don't believe it's taken from that item.
No, we haven't.
Well, that'll be an issue for the incoming bill courier service. That would
Right,
be.
that has nothing to do with us, that has to do with the coverage.
Wait a minute. Say that again.
So, give an example, so, some cities and towns in their zoning bylaws, zoning ordinance typically prohibited delivery, home delivery. So as a result of creating the courier license, a number of cities and towns had to go back and amend the zoning bylaw or ordinance to allow cannabis retail stores to do delivery. If it isn't mentioned in the zoning ordinance or bylaw, the question comes up to be, well, is it allowed?
Getting back to my original question, should this application be approved? Will delivery from this establishment be allowed without further approval by this group?
I have to go back and read the ordinance and see exactly what it says, bylaw, excuse me.
Would you need a DA? Or a marijuana delivery operation would need a new DA with the town of Maine?
Only if it's, so if it's,
Based in Maine.
so if it's based in Maine, if the courier business is based in Maine, depends on what Maine it includes in their zoning ordinance bylaw, excuse me, whether they allow it or not. So if a courier business is allowed in Maine, it can either be allowed as a matter of right in certain districts, because all it is basically Uber Eats or something, where people,
All right,
then
so,
that,
so since we did not discuss that in this hearing, I would suggest that it be a condition that it not be allowed.
I don't know if it has to be.
No,
Bill, can you help with them?
yeah, sure.
If right now, the town allows delivery by special permit for a specific special permit.
For a company that is establishing a delivery operation.
That is correct.
in Maine.
But they could, if they, let's assume that we had a company and we had issued the special permit.
Well, let's say it's a company in Hack.
Yes, they could, this board wouldn't, we don't address if a delivery company or courier company purchased retail product from one of our licensed dealers. What,
Okay, so I'm just saying, we have not yet discussed that topic as part of this hearing, and we are required to consider circulation and loading. The only loading we've been talking about is one car a couple times a week with live parking in the back. That's all we've heard.
Yeah, and I would suggest that
that is correct,
that's exactly correct.
right,
That,
but I want
to be understanding.
you gotta be clear, this operation is not, this is not delivery, this is
I
retail.
would consider that a change of use. So I would,
This is all theoretical.
yeah,
So I think we should,
I don't, this permit to me does not cover that type of scenario. It doesn't.
Well, then the condition should clarify that, because I believe that they assume that it's perfectly okay and they will not.
I
need further
don't want to
approval.
make assumptions on what they assume. But I understand, I get your point, Bill. But I don't want to speak for the applicant.
One other thing that the board may find is for general interest, that was brought up earlier also. The town has already been proactive with our other retailers in demonstrating how we were utilizing the 3%. That's part of this agreement. We have to show that it was utilized. And we met with the operators, so we've laid the groundwork. to keep
Right.
doing that.
But the point is that just simply written thought, it is not a net gain to the town, but
It is, we have an advantage in that because this isn't done under the downtown overlay district, which has a little different obligations than if it was in another district. But you're right, and Bill, and that the board should just know that the town staff has, we've already instituted that process to demonstrate every 2 years.
all right. The other comment about the sales tax is, yeah, that's the big revenue generator for the town, but. Are we to expect that a third marijuana establishment will increase those revenues to the town by 50%. It seems to me that it's just gonna cannibalize from the existing two, and the town gets the same in the end. Where are all these new people paying this new money coming from?
It's, you know, it's something similar to,
McDonald's and Burger King, ask them every time, right next to each other.
I'm not sure it's relevant, Bill, and,
It is,
well,
we're
I mean, we could,
supposed to consider the potential fiscal impact of the town on 10-4.
I would suggest that the community impact fee is,
Reimbursement costs,
that's
what the law says now. It used to be. It used to be.
so, to ask if this particular applicant will take away the community impact sales 3% from other establishments. I don't think that's part of our purview for this.
Oh, I absolutely think it is. It's just common sense. It's like, okay, so. Where's the extra business coming from? Oh,
it may cut off, but let me just, so when the Board of Selectmen, we had to get our HCA first. When the Board of Selectmen, when we went in before our hearing, they looked at the fact that the 3 stores would be located downtown. But one of the big significance that the store looked at, that does not exist in downtown, especially in the cannabis, is that it's a woman, minority-owned business, a social equity applicant. And the statute that was changed talks about communities being more proactive in attracting people that were impacted by the war on drugs, social equity applicants, minorities. That's part of the reason why the selectmen gave us the HCA. The question before you is, you know, the social economic. I clearly see that the social part is the fact that you're creating a special permit to allow a woman minority-owned business to do business in Maine is a social impact. And is a good social impact on the community. The economic impact is, do businesses take away from others, but they also attract other businesses as well. You know, cannabis is similar to a farmer brewer, going to a craft brewery, farmer brewery, is everyone has their distinct beers, whatever they do. You could have, I'll give you an example, in Weymouth, there's 2 farmer brewers next door to one another. They both do very well because they offer different products. Our approach is that we're not only doing a retail store, we're gonna end up opening a cultivation and manufacturing and focusing on unique greens. So will we take away from others? Probably. Will we increase business? More than likely. I mean, we're offering a different set of circumstances.
I don't think we have any information that says one or the other. And there is no information that says that this business will strictly take away or will add synergistically. I view downtown development as synergistic development, and I don't see this as a zero-sum distribution of a single pie. So that's why I'm saying, Bill, I don't find that particular part of it relevant. I don't recall if we allowed the contribution of 3%, Bill Nemser, in previous marijuana applications. Do you?
It was the time the statute hadn't evolved with it. And because we were concerned about, we'd heard, you know, that this was coming, and we just wanted to ensure that we linked it with the downtown overlay district. As part of, like Bill's talking about reimbursements, that was in it at the time when those were done, nobody was sure about whatever was gonna be traffic, whether there's gonna be additional police officers, whether it's, you know, whatever you're gonna need. We've seen we've had like 0 problem in that sense. What we have had is more impact in the downtown overlay district. And that was the rationale we used to explain to our other retailers and to justify why that was a warranted fee, and that's where we've left it with that. We haven't, obviously, this is brand new legislation. I think it positions us the best that we can to move the district ahead, and understanding that our permits are 2-year permits. it's, I would say 7 years before it comes in.
So the original language had 5, but I believe it. My learned counsel behind me who does it. It's 7 years now, right?
7-year max on anything.
So yeah, 7 years max instead of 5 on the payments of the HCA, but then you can't re-up it for another 7 or 5. Thank you.
Just to chime in, I mean, in my opinion, if we are specifically referencing the HCA that the company will have with the select board, I have no issue with them having to be the ones to sort out how exactly that number is arrived at and all that stuff. That's fine with me. In terms of, you guys really want me to get started on capitalism and how it's all gonna work, you don't want to hear that, because it's very boring and I'll get very worked up. I have no problem with it. I think any business that's coming into downtown, as long as it's an appropriate business that's allowed by zoning. Is good.
Let's talk about the delivery part of this. Would the applicant be okay if this was conditioned that says, if they're not allowed that type of delivery service?
I think it might help the board if I read our definition
Yeah.
of marijuana retailer first. Marijuana retailer is an entity licensed to purchase and sell marijuana and marijuana products from marijuana establishments and to sell or otherwise transfer marijuana and marijuana products to marijuana establishments and to consumers as defined under MGL Chapter 94G. Further provided that marijuana retailers may not be considered retail business in any other context. A marijuana retailer may deliver marijuana products with a delivery license is authorized and a separate special permit of the planning board. So basically what is, they're licensed to sell or transfer to people, to persons or other establishments. So the board has to work with that, but it's not a delivery business. It would be a separate special permit if that was them doing the business. I think the point that the applicant was, what I heard earlier was that if using a courier service or using a delivery service, the benefit would go to the selling establishment, so that would be where the revenue would be generated. If they're selling in Acton, they wouldn't collect the tax from Acton, it would be collected from the establishment in Maynard. That, so
I would also suggest that a delivery function not attached to this business, but that participating in that delivery function would be a change of the use that was intended, as we discussed here, particularly with traffic pattern flows. So I would just say that we could call them back to discuss traffic patterns at that time.
that's up to the board. To me, it comes out to like somebody used a fast food analogy in the Grubhub. So, if you had a fast food and we said, we're not going to have a drive-through for this restaurant, and Grubhub was picking up, making a number of runs there, how would the board regulate, how would they feel like that? That would be whenever it was in. It seems to me that it's a net benefit to have more business from, generating the spot, but the traffic considerations, this is a 2-year permit. If there's traffic considerations that are, an issue, we can revisit. We've done, as a matter of fact, we've done with other.
Sorry, Bill, I do want to move on,
Right.
if that's okay.
I can say we've had our applicants come back in a certain amount of days to.
Yep, Bill Crenshaw, I want to make sure your perspective is accounted for and satisfied, but I also want to make sure we get to these other items too. So where are you at right now?
Let's fun on that topic. I want to confirm the assumptions regarding circulation, traffic flow and safety. So is this maintaining public vehicle and pedestrian access through the alley?
Yeah, it's a private property, but that, no way to be put in a special application that is being taken away.
So if it ends up as a condition, that's fine.
It's a landlocked property. I don't know how you can put it as a condition, But the planning board can do what it wants to do, but I think, you know, the landlord hasn't said one way or the other.
I think the
And then,
landlord
before you-
indicated today, by the way, I might not have seen it, the landlord indicated today, I believe that the applicant can speak for him.
Oh, for purposes of,
That's the way I understood the email.
Well, I'm not sure why we object to a condition. We're specifying in our application that we're gonna refresh the existing striping and we're gonna add a number of visual indicators both to the roadway and vertical signage. So that's to vehicular.
Signage was also supposed to be for pedestrians, like, as mentioned in the last meeting.
So I believe we've satisfied the conditions that our peer review requested with regard to that.
Just ask the question whether, you know, if it ended up as a proposed condition, just to be clear to everybody, whether that was, anybody had a problem with that.
Yeah, I think that if there's any ticklishness about it, it's perhaps the implication that including the language about pedestrians would somehow open the question of, have we sufficiently provided for the safety of pedestrians with the
Yeah,
curb and all that?
I don't want to have a reference to pedestrian in the condition, but the condition would be the northern alley will be maintained as publicly accessible or something like that. I think it's the parking. We just, you know, that's a contribution that people can park there that may not fully be in that business.
No, that wasn't,
No,
I was just talking about getting from Basin down to the basin.
Driving.
Back and forth.
Driving lane two, yeah, driving lane two.
Yeah, I want to kind of give it from the park.
Mr. Chair, just to be clear, we're actually not offering those spaces to the public.
Okay,
and they aren't now. Even though they're used by the public.
okay, so northern drive alley will be maintained as publicly acceptable.
Yes.
Okay, can we, is there other thoughts on the board before?
I just have one other thing on the alley is, how do we establish the required 14-foot travel lane? It looks like we gotta take away a couple of the striped spots that are closest to the street, but
I don't,
probably it's no big deal, because, you know, they have to back out onto the sidewalk to get out of the spaces, so they're not a great idea anyway.
I don't know if we do. Wayne, you want to help us out with that question?
Relative to maintain the 14-foot, this is kind of a,
But they have 14 feet.
right, this is. I'm gonna defer to the board on this, honestly, this is very subjective. The building commissioner made it very clear that this application is not subject to any parking requirements. All these guys are doing is restriping things. It is clearly not compliant with any standards that we have, but they're not changing that. They're restriping things. So I mean, from my perspective, we can't challenge them on that because it's an existing condition that they're not doing anything to other than making it look pretty and putting signs up on their own property. So I mean, I don't think we can guarantee that there's a 14-foot space there. Clearly, to Bill's point, there isn't. But it's an existing
I
condition.
totally disagree. I think we have a right and a responsibility to make it safe. And are, at the minimum, they're required a 14-foot gap. And whether they, I mean, I'm sure they never got permission to misstripe it. So, you know, I'm not gonna let a past mistake dictate a future mistake. So let's just try to go for the 14 feet, take away the 1 or 2 spaces we need to get to the 14 feet and leave it at that.
I don't think we have information enough to determine where the 14-foot mark is along this corridor, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would argue that the parking may be considered a structure, some similar to the non-conforming use that existed prior to 2007 under your non-conforming structure use bylaw. These parking spaces existed. We're changing, no use has changed, it's retail space going to retail space. I think under the parking ordinance, specifically, it says if the change of use is being done, we're doing retail to retail, so there's no change of use. I think the parking spaces existed prior to the passing of the zoning bylaw relative to parking. It was non-conforming when the zoning bylaw was passed, and it's covered under section 5 of your zoning bylaw relative to non-conforming, so therefore it does not have to conform. In the alternative, under the parking bylaw, it does give you the ability to seek a waiver of the parking requirements.
Bill Crenshaw, I think we would need the applicant to make these changes voluntarily. Strictly for the reason that they're not making any changes to the parking structure here. And
I totally disagree. I mean, having outside delivery vendors pulling that first space and then back onto our sidewalk.
but we have a delivery zone in the back.
But now they come in the front door, they don't come in the back when they're picking up and delivering to household.
He's talking about Uber, the Uber.
No,
Eats
That's
model.
not part of this.
You're hypothesizing about some future application under a different business.
I'm not, because the attorney is claiming that as of right.
You asked me relative to how much revenue the city of town, and I specifically said with
It's back
retail.
to that out, it's back to the home delivery.
No,
And I brought up the fact potentially home delivery creates more revenues for the town of Maine, because if the cannabis retail stores in Maine deliver outside of the town, that 3% sales tax goes back to the town.
I'm not talking about.
Let's move on from the revenue discussion. Let's focus strictly on parking. I'd like to hear from other board members on this. From my perspective, I would need the applicant to be on board to make voluntary changes, since there's really no mechanism for me to see that we can instruct them to make these changes, since they're not making any site plan review, and they're not making any changes to the parking itself. And I agree, it's a non-conforming issue. But it's hard for me to understand how we're gonna get the applicant on board with this. I'm going to hear from other board on this one. That's okay. No takers? No? Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you, I agree with that.
What do you think, Bob?
So. Let's see. There are a couple of things that concern me about the site and what's going on with the site. And I've talked about it in past meetings. And I've also talked about it with Bill. And Wayne, I'm glad you're here, because maybe you can help me feel a little bit more comfort than I feel.
I can try, Bob.
When I'm looking at that image, and I see the delivery truck there in the middle of the fire lane. You know, I'm hesitant to authorize parking in the fire lane unless there's no other alternative. So I'm not really convinced there's no other alternative here. And I'm concerned because I went out to the site on 3 different occasions and I see that people are parking in the fire lane for prolonged periods of time. Today. So it's clearly marked as a fire lane, so people park there. So why, should we authorize parking in the fire lane if they could park on the side of the building? Is there some reason?
So my understanding,
The question was for me.
I'll let
That's
Tim
why my
answer.
hands up rather than I'm speaking.
But I mean, I think that the vehicle is indicated there for a delivery option. I don't think that that's a permanent parking spot. At least that's my understanding from the applicant's discussion. And Bob, I agree with you. Nobody should be parking in, we don't know the origin of this fire lane. I had this discussion with Julie and Bill a couple of times, but we don't know why it's there. Somebody authorized that at some point in the past. I'm not confident, and nor do I feel justified in recommending that any of that change, because somebody thought that was important enough to stripe out at one point, so it was designated as a fire lane. None of the other buildings in the area have anything like that, so it's rather odd, I agree with you. And if people are parking in that on town property, they shouldn't be, and it's an enforcement issue, and the police should be towing those people. If they're parking on private property, that's kind of a nebulous area, whether they should be towed or not on private property, right? Even though it's a fire lane. Maybe to some people they should, but it's probably an issue for the property owner more than somebody else. I don't know if that answers your question directly, Bob, but
So that's helpful, because when I look at this, I think. How is an emergency vehicle going to get through and fight a fire back there in the corner? If there are people parking in the fire lane or blocking the fire lane the way they park.
Yep.
And so just because of that, I just feel it's like, it's the slippery slope. You allow somebody to park there 2 days a week, then they're gonna be parking there all the time. Somebody's gonna be parking there all the time. We see it happening today anyways. So when they first came in, I thought, first proposal, the parking was gonna be on the side of the building, the last space down there.
Yeah.
So I'm saying to myself, why isn't that the preferred alternative here? There's something wrong with that.
Can I say something?
Yes.
Okay, so two things. One, I read the communication that I read from the fire chief, who's now the retired fire chief, but he specifically looked at this, correct? And he said that he felt comfortable maintaining it as a fire lane and that temporary deliveries were appropriate for the space as long as long-term parking was not part of it.
Well, maybe that could just be a condition.
That is our,
The Natalie point.
that is our.
He actually said something more. He said there's a problem with the parking back there.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
You got a lot of complaints about parking back there. And he said he's okay with parking back there for the delivery rather than parking on the street. Because he doesn't want the delivery drivers parked on the street.
Okay,
So, okay, so I know his preference would have been not to park in the fire lane if there was a reasonable alternative.
he didn't say that though.
Well, that's what I read. There were two
Oh.
different communications.
Well, my point is that in terms of currently, I walk through the basin almost every single day and I see cars parked crazy down there. There's also no active business, like there's no active business using the back of the building right now, right? So presumably with refreshed striping, new signs, active delivery vehicles coming to make deliveries to the business, I can't imagine that the property owner or the tenant would not take action to make sure that people were not parking there, make sure that people were not inappropriately using that whole area.
Well, they're using it today for their dumpster.
Well, they're gonna have to deal with that. That's my point, is that
And I think
it's an
We're having-
inactive area right
I just think we're having I agree with a lot of this, it's just what I'm trying to make sure is that we're understanding what is part of our scope under planning board review, which is for the special permit criteria, the downtown overlay district criteria, and this site plan review.
If, may I ask the board?
So would be, yes, but let me just finish quickly. So yes, I agree that the current condition of people parking around that building is kind of claustrophobic and doesn't work really well, but that's not part of our scope. Our scope is to ensure that the fire lane maintains its existence and gets restriped. If we allow a delivery vehicle, which we've discussed and had some consensus on, then that's allowed with the short durations, which was already discussed. Anything beyond that, though, would not be in compliance with a special permit, or would be a code violation, which would be handled by the building commissioner. So I see a lot of mechanisms already where I think this is from our purview of making a decision. I'm feeling pretty good about that back area, and I'm feeling pretty good about the alleyway. I mean, I agree with Bill Crenshaw that 14 feet is standard, and I would want that. Maybe the applicant would be willing to remove parking space 1, which might get us closer to 13 plus, but I would need a voluntary action on that point. Because there's no mechanism that the applicant is triggering for us to provide design and site plan review that Wayne would dictate compliance on.
Yeah, to that point, Chris, and to the point Bill made earlier, if they were proposing these spaces, we wouldn't agree that they're acceptable because they don't meet any minimum that is in the zone.
Right, so maybe there's some simple things the applicant might be able to help with. What do you
Can I
think?
just, a
Yeah.
couple of things?
Yeah.
First, on the loading zone, you are correct, it's live parking. In order for cannabis to be delivered, it has to have 2 drivers, one stays in the vehicle and the other one goes into the product. They're calling ahead with a half hour before to let us know they're coming. We would have a serious issue with people parking in the loading zone and staying there. On another point, and forgive me if I'm wrong, I thought that since there's no exterior change to the building, this is only really a question of use, that site plan review does not come into play, but I could be wrong.
That, yeah, there was a question about that, how much, and what the board, originally the discussion was that there is, because it's in the central business district, it does fall under a criteria for site plan review. The board recognized, and I think that, in this case, the building commissioner and staff recognize that a wholesale site plan review would be inappropriate, it's not. And I think the general scope of it, the site plan review is limited to circulation, general safety, ADA access.
And I've made that determination prior to this hearing. That it should be limited, called the limited site plan review based on circulation, parking, and those types of items.
And just, and then one last point on the driveway, and Wayne can correct me if I'm wrong, but under the zoning bylaw, the whole strip needs to be 14 feet from the front to the back, isn't that correct, Wayne?
To be compliant.
To be compliant. So it's not just making that corner sweep doesn't make it any more compliant or less compliant.
But what Bill Crenshaw is saying, and I'm reading through the lines there, that alleyway widens, so by the end of it, it definitely gets to 14 feet. I looked at it the other day.
If you slide down to that spot, you can see it. I believe we've struck a line at 14. And
Tim, in your analysis, to
Yep.
answer the question that Chris and Phil were asking, do you have any idea how many spaces would be impacted to provide 14 feet? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know you did look at this a little bit. I just don't have all that material in front of me.
yeah, thank you. I mean, we looked at a lot. We developed something like 6 or 7 different parking scenarios. It might be, I know this doesn't work for.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well-
it's not really the same type of comparison.
You had a few.
Yeah, in our existing, I've got the 14-foot dimension identified.
Oh, okay. There you go. You can,
So scroll to the west.
you wanna, you have your mouse there.
Oh. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I can't read it, but that says,
Here, I'll zoom in.
that says 12'6" there.
Yeah.
So forgive me, this line indicates something else. I thought that said 14. So, you know, we can just kind of trace and see that if we're parallel from this, about 18 inches away from that. That would probably come at the cost of 2 spaces.
I would agree that that seems reasonable without actually measuring it.
I mean, what happens if we ask for maybe? Then make, I mean, if you made space 1 not a space, it would make the turning radii much better and it would be a safer turn, it'd be a safer operation. Would that be amenable? I mean, because that would be an improvement towards 14. It may not get us at the exact 14, but it'd be an improvement.
I was thinking about potentially,
It's really not hard to
Fire
get 14 if you spot paint, because you can move 1 and 2 to the other side of 9, you can still fit them in. And then you can slide down 9 if you have to, but you probably don't. But you got room down there for another 2 spaces on the other side of that utility pole.
oh, I see, you swap the spaces.
Even away from the pedestrian.
Did you put the bollard 14 feet away?
Oh, yeah. The bollard is 14 feet from Babaco's, right? I believe.
You put the 2 bollards, right?
That's correct. All of that 14.
Yeah.
So that gives you a good. You draw an imaginary line.
So we'd have to tuck a space here, move the bollard out. And Mr. Granshaw's point, maybe get another space there.
I think, Tim, I think you're right. Just look eyeballing it. You probably will sacrifice the first 2 spaces and relocating them does, you know, can hatch an area out around that utility pole, obviously. And put them on the other side, then you won't have any loss of parking.
That's all right with that.
Would it be possible to, for purposes of the front 2, make that a condition subject to, the most 2, but subject to the fire department for its turning radius? So if they only need one space for the turning
You
radius.
know, there's no way it's gonna satisfy.
No, I didn't,
Yeah.
oh, well, okay, no, you already answered the question.
Good attempt.
I,
We're far away. from it.
Wait for that, so we have a.
Let me, well, okay, so let's,
I would suggest that there be 9 spaces allowed and, but a minimum of 14 feet. Width of the travel way be provided.
that's a condition, it gives you flexibility, figure it out, so we condition it as. Travel lane is 14 feet, you're allowed up to 9 spaces. Put them wherever you
I
want.
think that's appropriate, up to, just in case Tim does the math and he can only fit. Right, gives them flexibility.
and just to point out that I also feel like going forward. This also does improve the pedestrian experience in terms of cars backing out onto the front sidewalk. On the, you know, the front of the shop, that's also an additional benefit.
Well, and that's part of the problem, I agree with you. So that, especially the front one.
Yeah.
To get out of there, you're backing onto the.
Oh, yeah, there's a couple of select few.
But for me, that protects the box a lot better than a tree.
Okay, other thoughts from the board quickly?
If you're going to add the parking space at the bottom of the hill, can you use that for the delivery vehicle? And just reserve it when you end your delivery. But that way you won't have to park live parking in the fire lane.
I do understand Bob's concern. That area is extremely tight between the building and the adjacent building and the parking area. And Bob, I don't want to read between the lines, but my guess is your concern is that even temporary parking may block an emergency vehicle for that area. I'm reading through the line, but I think that's what you're
I
worrying about.
think that may happen, plus it's incentive. It creates the appearance that the parking zone doesn't matter. The no parking zone doesn't matter. You know, the whole notion that we have a fire lane for emergency vehicles to travel through. And we're gonna say, oh, it's okay for you to park there. Well, how about the next guy should better think I can park there too?
But they're not parking, there's going to be someone in the driver's seat at all times.
I'm just based on what I'm seeing taking place there today and seeing how people are parking back there. You know, it just, to me, it's like, if we're talking about safety, we shouldn't be authorizing people to live park in the fire lane.
I'm just
If
going,
if there's an alternative. And I'm just suggesting, it seems to me to be a reasonable alternative.
I'm just going off of what the fire chief wrote, that he was okay with it.
Craig, could I ask a question? What is the timeline? Like, how long is that delivery? So like, is it approximately?
Could be up to 15 minutes at the very most.
And that's once a week or once,
2 to 3 times a week.
2 or 3 times?
The thing should be noted is that right now, the store is empty. So with the business going in there. It's to our benefit to ensure that that parking space is always available. For a delivery vehicle. So if you're looking at it today with only one business in that building. That only uses the front of the building versus another business going into that building that needs to utilize the back as well. I don't think you'll see that same parking taking place in the fire lane with the understanding that, don't forget, part of that fire lane is actually on private property.
Let's do it this way. The question was asked. The applicant gets to decide if moving that space is amenable or the current condition is what you need, because it's your application. And you know, your site plan to present to us, and if that's what you decide, then that's what we will consider and take into account. So,
Mr. Chair, can I throw one thing in here about parking? It's in my. Be clear, I think parking. It's not into the town to allow parking in a fire lane. That's being done. There's no on public property. There's no question about that. And I think one of the things the parking authority's been wrestling with, it's the same as with enforcement with meters or anything like this. I am reasonably certain that the police department, there could be communications, that would result in probably ticketing of vehicles there, and of course, you know how that goes, but eventually people would learn from that. I don't see any reason why a person would leave a car. I think Bob's 100% right. Why would you park in a park? It just doesn't make sense. I think the distinction between that and the live parking, you know, with somebody in the car is different, but what I think, and I saw the same thing with Bob, isn't it? For the applicant.
Let's do this. Let's condition this and review after 1 year.
So can I read the condition back?
Now, before you do that. Could we also make sure that those two bollards that are being installed there are designed so that we put a signpost down the sleeve, so we can hang a couple of tiny no parking signs on them? Because that would help get cars away from the.
No, which one?
The ball is in the
They
fire.
got two bollards right in our
Hold on.
fire, right?
Second,
So you have an option when you put in a bollard that you can, drop a signpost right
Doing
down.
that for the direct.
Hang a sign there.
If you, Julie, if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see that I think we anticipate Mr. Crenshaw's statement with the text and specification.
on these ones, but he's
Oh,
talking
I
about,
understand.
Talking about
Do something similar up there.
those three right there. I mean, you could just condition that you put a no parking sign. Sure. It's like you have the no one way on the other ball. That seems reasonable. Me.
so you,
If I may, Tim, I don't see the fire lane marking on that plan, and I know it's on the street. And I know the narrative suggested that you're gonna refresh what's there. So is it going to include the fire lane markings on the pavement, or are those going away?
So if you see the curving arc and the diagonal stripes contained by that arc, those comprise the fire lane marking.
So it's not gonna have words that say fire lane.
It's going in now.
If there's words that say fire lane there now, then we're gonna refresh those words.
They're not words that, are there words that say firmly no?
yeah, they're just not on the.
They're refreshing the current condition, so whatever the current condition is, that's the expectation.
It's
So
actually written outside of the striping. It's a very odd arrangement, and my only, to the point Bob was making, I think the only reason this was put here is to make sure that there's emergency vehicle access to the back of each building. But it is outside, so I think all you guys are looking for is a move from the applicant to restrike whatever's there. Right, including the language.
All right, any further thoughts from the board?
Being reasonable.
Okay, let's go over the conditions. Julie, would you like to run through them now? I know you've been trying to for about, well, I don't know how long.
Well, I'm just trying to take what you guys are saying and form them into some conditions. So let's start with the one that we just said. So the fire lane shall be used for active delivery for marijuana only. No vehicle shall be in the fire lane for more than 15 minutes. How do we feel about that wording?
Mhm.
Okay,
Well, it's not fire lane, the delivery zone. Delivery zone is allowed for deliveries for the 15-minute, not the fire lane.
well, the delivery zone and the fire lane are the same.
The delivery zone.
Yeah, I just don't want to have a condition that says they're allowed to have it, do something in the fire lane,
The
so.
delivery zone adjacent to the building will be used only for.
Well, we say delivery zone in the site plan that we're referenced.
What if we striped a parking space that corresponded to that car you see there in some other way and called that a delivery
Delivery
zone
zone.
and surrounded it by the fire lane?
I don't think we wanna do that. That would need approval by the fire.
Did we get that approval?
Can I, Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment or how does the applicant feel to the point that Bob was making earlier? I know you don't need any parking spaces to put into a zoning compliance officer, right? But do you? What if you had this theoretical spot that we're gonna draw down near the property line, right? These two new spaces, what if you just strike one of those as deliveries only? That would leave you theoretically a minimum of 6 to 7 spaces for patrons. I guess my question is that enough?
I would leave that to.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak from my perspective, security wise. Security wise, the verbiage that you were mentioning earlier should be live, so that we use the word live. And in regards to that, I'm concerned about security and safety. I'd rather see that vehicle as close to the building as possible.
Okay.
We have a designated spot, I don't want to see that product being taken out of it. If they either that building over there, they're walking with the product, they're coming and walking, so strictly from a security point of view. I think it behooves to have that vehicle as close to the building as possible.
Just to amplify that for a second, as Rick and I have discussed it, the vehicle is between traffic and the building. And a door would open here, the open doors on either side would aim toward the building. Right, so you can imagine the path is shortened as much as possible and other folks not, who shouldn't be participating in delivery are as best as possible blocked from.
And security in the building also has a visual eye on that vehicle at all times, where they wouldn't if it had a designated spot.
That's the applicant's proposal, and
That's fine, I just wanted to ask, thank you.
so let's get back to the condition.
Okay, so the second condition is the northern drive alley shall be maintained as publicly accessible.
And we'll have a 14-foot wide driveway and allowed up to 9 spaces.
Yeah, so I actually, I
Okay, sorry.
separated that up, just because, so, if we jump up to what I had, I think as number 4 in the staff report, but, the applicant shall modify the exterior as approved on site plan, on attached site plan dated 2/6/2023. And then I added with the following changes, the travel lane shall be 14 feet and shall allow for up to 9 parking feet.
Mhm.
Because those are changes to the site plan, so we're approving everything else on the site plan. As they have shown, besides the 14 feet,
Can you confirm the reference to the site plan?
the
Do we
date.
have that? We have that as an exhibit?
That's, yes, the changes.
The word on revised.
Is it this thing that we're looking at?
It's this one,
Yeah.
And the date we're referencing?
is February 6th.
What's the date on this one?
We checked this earlier.
February 7th.
February 7th.
But we're gonna want to revise, updated. To reflect this, correct?
But, I think on the conditions, so I'll just change that to February 7th. Okay, so then, if we go back up to some of the other ones that, I proposed before, so number 1, the applicant shall install 2 tree wells and 2 trees according to DPW specifications at a minimum value of $10,000, but not to exceed $12,000. The value of work is less than $10,000. The remaining value shall be used on other downtown tree canopy improvements as approved by DPW. The total value shall be substantiated through invoices provided to DPW. So I know that changed in conversation.
Yeah, that does not include, obviously, the mural.
Yeah, so we want to remove that, if the value of work is less than $10,000 from that.
I would say maybe add to something like the applicant. May include. Up to $3,000 to count towards its contribution for the mural.
Only if and only if they don't reach the 3,000 or the 10,000 with 2.
I'm fine with them having flexibility, and that's my personal thought. I think having a $10,000 to $12,000 number. And then having them have a little bit of flexibility on how to get to that number, I'm fine with. And then working with the town entities, and very, it gets conducted correctly.
I think something that was a concern when we were talking with the applicant was just ensuring that there is a cap. So, the applicant was concerned as,
Yeah, and it says.
all of these things, so as long as you guys are good with the cap,
Yeah, I am.
great.
And others, please chime in if you think that $10,000 to $12,000 is not. Acceptable. I was helping to design this so that it matched previous applicants that have been approved.
I'm totally fine with the number. I'm just a little concerned that. There'll be some infighting going, hey, you used up all the money. I was supposed to have it for my mural.
That's not a problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you wording it? They're just gonna give $10,000 and it will be used for trees and or mural?
So, the applicant shall install 2 tree wells and 2 trees at a minimum value of $10,000. And the way that they prove that they've spent that is through, invoices. So they have to go and hire a contractor, at DPW specifications of they're going to pay for all of that install. And then prove to us that they've spent that.
Yeah, well, what about the $3,000 for mural? I don't understand how that's supposed to be.
So, wait, wasn't there another thing? It was the trees,
Or we just don't include the marijuana in the decision,
The handicap spot.
the handicap spot, $1,000 for the handicap spot. So that is that on here?
Um,
No,
No,
No, staff says that's not relevant to the decision.
but isn't that part of the total cost?
part of the proposal for sure, but.
I think we were uncomfortable with putting that into a condition since they have not had approval or a conversation with ADA that they're having that tomorrow. So it's a great addition if
Okay.
that can go through, but what we were concerned about is ADA coming back and saying, oh, well, we actually want you to like completely redo the grading.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, now she's having to spend like $8,000.
Right.
So we can add that as, the applicant may include
Can we
the
say,
additional funds towards the handicap spot.
yeah, can we say if value of work is less than $10,000, the remaining value shall be used to other downtown improvements?
As
Get rid of
specified.
tree work, tree canopy, just say downtown improvements. Such as, no, including. Mural,
And or parking, handicap parking spaces,
thank you, sorry, I just lost it.
right? Be specific with the two,
Yeah,
not just anything, those
yeah,
two.
saying, yeah, however you wanna word that. English.
So that maintains the 10 to 12K, provides some options to get to that number.
Okay, but please don't make the decision authority on the remaining funds to DPW, make it select board.
Great,
Well, the funds, when
funds have to go to.
they wouldn't be giving us any funds. They would be spending that money and then giving those invoices to DPW.
And it's up to the applicant to determine.
right, but they're saying,
That's not what. it
they're
says.
saying if they spend $6,000 on 2 free wells.
Yes.
We don't want them saying, okay, here's another $4,000 DPW, what do you want it spent on?
We have said that can only include a mural or a handicap spot.
Okay, great,
Well,
yeah, only, great,
Mr. Chair, I just want to suggest that our comfort with the 14 feet is rooted, I don't have technical equipment here and scale. Our comfort with that 14 feet is rooted in the sort of intuitive read that it would probably cost us the 2 westernmost spaces. So let me offer a friendly amendment to that 14. What if we agree to sacrifice the 2 westernmost spaces? Anchor the width at whatever that next stripe is, and then trade it for a space or 2 at the end, recognize it may not be 2, but it's certainly gonna be 1.
I mean, I think that's the improvement that would really help. I don't know how to condition that appropriately,
I mean,
but
Well, you know you have an extra 4 feet on the end of 9, right? Before you hit that. That post.
but the point is.
look,
he's not sure.
there's another way to do this. Cynthia. If you can't get to that 14-foot number, you just come back for a modification.
I was hoping not to come back.
Me too.
Before we lose, can we just
Yeah, well,
wrap this one condition up?
Yeah.
Before we lose anything? So I changed it a little bit. So if the value of work is less than $10,000, the remaining funds shall be used towards a mural and or a handicap spot within the downtown overlay district.
Great,
Perfect.
Can I make a comment based on Tim's suggestion about the 2 spaces? I understand Tim can't measure it. It may be slightly shy of
Right.
14, maybe it's 13'8". Either way, it's better than what it is.
Right.
And it's closer to being compliant than what it is. And it takes the cars away from that turning movement and from Bill's concern about folks backing into the sidewalk, which is a real concern. That seems reasonable.
How can we say that in the language?
Well, Tim suggested it, that they, those two spaces be removed
Yeah.
and be replaced with two spaces to the east.
Yeah.
And those be striped out. I think you better be clear. You want those two spaces in that space up adjacent to the sidewalk be crosshatched so that no parking is.
Right.
I mean, in our graphic, I could replace this plan with another plan, and put the red circle around that. Says this stripe ends at a point certain in space, and the new stripe comes back exactly where this one does, not another inch.
That would be fine with me.
If you can write that condition, I'm fine with it.
You just point to it, we'll put a circle there and an arrow, you could say as drawn.
You could just make a condition, if I could suggest, Mrs. Chair, that the applicant shall provide an updated site plan for review by staff prior to issuance of the approval. You guys vote to approve everything, it can't technically be handed over to him until he provides a new plan for Bill and really a review.
So then. Too many controls. So then we would be deleting the applicant shall modify the exterior as approved on a site, attached site plan dated 7th. And we would change that condition to say. The applicant shall provide an updated site plan as specified by the planning board
As discussed in tonight's
To be
meeting.
reviewed by.
to be reviewed by staff.
And
Is
we're gonna
that-
remove the 14 feet.
Yeah.
Reference, right?
Yeah.
Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah.
To you guys?
We've done it.
That's the way.
It's better to do something like that, rather than have all these conditions that 3 years from now, someone's gonna look at it and wonder what they mean.
Then I just got one more condition to read out, and then you guys are good. Besides, there are two that we conditions that we put in every decision, the planning board retains all authority to modify or otherwise address all aspects of the permit at any time. This includes, is not limited to, the planning board determination. There are circumstances or deemed problematic, dangerous, and or otherwise require modification to the intent of the permit or the zoning bylaw. So that's one that we keep in everything. And then the other one that we keep in everything is the special permit is valid for 2 years from the granting certificate of occupancy. The applicant shall be required to file a renewal request and appear before the planning board at a public hearing. And then the last one that we added in discussions with DPW about restriping. We just want to make sure that that conversation is had with DPW before the restriping begins, just so they all agree on what type of restriping they're going to get received. So for example, sometimes you do steel coating, sometimes you do etching to erase the existing stripes and put down new ones. So we just want to make sure that that conversation happens. So it says restriping shall be done in accordance with DPW direction and specifications.
What about the signs with dollars? We don't have any detail sheets on them, right?
No, can you add that into if you're updating the site plan already?
Add the new parking signs that we talked about.
On the bollards in the fire lane.
On the bars, through the,
Sorry,
The 3 bollards indicated in the fire lane area.
yep,
Well, I'm
That-
also talking about the do not enter and the enter and on one way and all those signs.
what Bill Crenshaw is referring to, typically we see cut sheets for a lot of this stuff, and or specifications.
He doesn't have any construction detail for that.
Yeah,
So do we have a condition that, all signage and bollards have to be approved by you?
You can do that just by staff, you want to say by town staff.
Yeah.
Fine. Bill's not wrong, and that normally, details on construction details will be provided. In the plan, so.
yeah, I mean, we'll give you what you want, I'm not accustomed to designing no parking signs, but. You could show us what you like.
basically the condition will be that it just needs to be approved by town staff. So it's just so they coordinate on the actual sign. We don't want fluorescent green and yellow.
How about this, just to be more specific, all sign details shall be approved by town staff and be MUTCD compliant. That way we've got.
Well, hopefully I want to prove something.
Yeah, but what if you and I aren't here and the next person doesn't know what MUTCD is?
Okay,
All right, that's is that the condition?
that is the condition.
I would be careful of making that one so narrow, because you need approval of the posts and the bollards too. Because, you know, these can't be 2-inch bollards that are 1 foot in the ground. You know, we're not gonna be, but just in case, somebody has to say, yeah, that's right,
Okay. I
because they
got
have
that.
no details.
Kim, I will, you're gonna be revising the plan. If you just remind me, I'll send you a detail that I've used and you can just stick it on your plan. That way you don't have to, we don't have to worry about
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed and negotiated the locations of these things, and in that they're, from our standpoint, these are municipal civic infrastructure. We're gonna suit the program that the municipality tells us.
And we're just codifying that, that's all.
Yeah.
That's all. I'm gonna open this up for public comments, if there's any public comments on this project. If you're online on the Zoom, please use the raise hand feature and we'll call on you. Is there any public comments here tonight? I'll leave public comment open until we adjourn. Any other, are we done with the conditions? Am I gonna have to read that list of conditions if I make a motion?
I think, no, that's,
I'll entertain a motion or any other final thoughts from the board.
Did you include a periodic review, like a 1-year review or 6-month review?
I have just the 2-year certificate of occupancy. Do we want an additional 1-year review?
Referencing my suggestion of a 1-year review of the back parking. We can do a 1-year review of parking.
I would specify, based on a past experience, that we specify that it would be at a public meeting, plus require a public hearing.
And then limited to just the loading zone, it would be consideration for one safety fund.
The 1-year review, we have a public meeting, not a hearing, it's just a conversation. Just about how the parking and delivery service is going. It's also an opportunity for your team to request any modifications as well that may come about or whatever reason. So I find it to be helpful more as a discussion point than a compliance. one.
1 year from date of opening. Big.
Yes, please.
Certificate of occupancy. Usually the-
You know,
Great.
whatever we've done previously,
We've done it for opening because the CEO sometimes with the cannabis control permit and stuff
yeah,
like that.
that's right, it's all.
Right.
Right, I'm going to, so there's 3 items on the table for tonight, site plan review. Compliance with special permit criteria and compliance with the downtown overlay district. The conditions themselves, Julie and Bill. Those conditions go on which one of these? Which one of these, site plan review,
The conditions, well, it's all gonna be,
or should we do it all at once?
if everything's going to be on, in the special permit is going to approve. Assuming the board opted to do that, the decision will authorize the permit itself with the conditions, subject to the conditions. The site plan will be tied in with the decision. And then we're gonna have a revised site plan, so we're not gonna say, you know, it'll be the latest iteration.
Okay,
Site plan.
before we move to close the hearing, is there any other additional information that the applicant's team would like to provide? Just common practice, I want to make sure.
Is that?
Yeah, everything.
What?
Avery's gonna hand up, or is that the?
That's not a hand.
That's the first.
So no additional information? I will make a motion to close the hearing. I'll second that. All in favor by voice, Bill,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
I'm a yes, Bob,
Yes.
Jim, so that's 5-0 to close the hearing. At this time, no new additional information can be provided, clarifications can. So. Let's go with. Which one could I tackle first, Bill?
My suggestion would be, to go in the order that we have the,
Action required.
yeah, action required on section 7.
Right, I will make a motion for the board to determine that the application and all information presented has met the criteria for special permit as described in section 10.4.2 of the zoning bylaw.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Jim. Any discussion on this matter? This is regarding item 4. This is our special permit criteria. So this is the socioeconomic community impact, traffic impacts. Any discussion on this one? Any perspectives that anyone would like to give? I find that generally I'm voting yes on this. I find that they meet the criteria. Okay, so no discussion, we'll go through a vote. All in favor by voice, Bill Crenshaw,
No,
Natalie,
Yes.
I'm a yes, Bob,
Yes,
Jim, yes. Okay, so that's 4-1. Bill Crenshaw's a no, the rest of the board members were yes. I'll make a motion that the board determine that the application and request meets the criteria for the downtown overlay district special permit as described in section 9.4.6 of the zoning bylaws.
I'll second that.
I'm sorry, does this need to include all the conditions?
The determination it meets the criteria, it should be also as presented in the application, revised
Well,
application.
so my motion was that as presented today,
Yeah.
but I did not, so on the first motion we made was voted on, I did not include language that referenced the conditions.
As reviewed.
I didn't know if it was that in my first one, I think I made a mistake. Should I do it again?
Yeah.
You just send you a version.
And we'll make an amendment.
I think motion to reconsider.
I don't know the procedures are gonna help,
Take it up.
I think.
I
Well, cannot the conditions stick to 2, 3, or 4? The same impact?
don't know.
Make a motion to amend your
I'll
original motion and then have us re-vote on that.
Okay, I'll make a motion to amend my previous motion regarding the special permit criteria in section 10.4 to include the language that including the proposed conditions as discussed and presented by town staff this evening. I'll second the amendment. Thank you, Jim. All in favor for a revote? Bill Crenshaw,
Of the rewording of the motion, yes.
thank you. Natalie?
Yeah.
I'm a yes. Bob's a yes.
Yeah.
Kim's a yes. So that was on the rewording of the motion. Note that Bill Crenshaw did not vote for the motion, but simply for the rewording of the motion. Let's do this again. I'll make a motion to determine the request and the application and the information presented during this hearing meets the criteria for the downtown overlay district special permit as described in section 9.4.6 of the zoning bylaws.
That reference to information includes the proposed condition.
I think it should, including the proposed conditions as discussed this evening and presented by town staff. Do I have a second?
And just point of order, I think you want to redo 10.4.2, not 9.4.6.
So I just redid 10.4. And now we've moved down to 9.4.6.
Okay, I was confused. I thought you just got an agreement to go back and read it.
We
So-
had to skip that. then.
Okay,
We slipped it in there and that's what we re-voted on.
okay.
I added language to the previous motion that included this, the conditions.
I hate to belabor this, yeah. But the change of that language would surprise me if it changed Mr. Crenshaw's vote from a no to a yes.
He didn't vote yes on that. He voted to add the language into the previous motion.
I see, so the votes stand.
Vote stands. I
Got it.
voted to amend the
Okay.
previous motion to add the language.
Thank you for the explanation. I'm sorry, I was confused.
No, it's, okay. The motion has been made and seconded for 9.4.6. All in favor by voice, Bill Crenshaw?
Yeah.
Natalie?
Yes.
I'm a yes, Bob?
Yeah.
That's 5-0 for, the great downtown North Lake District criteria 9.4.6 bill.
Got it.
Finally. No, two more. I'll make a motion. To approve the site plan as. To approve an amended site plan that the applicant will provide and town staff will. Approve as discussed through changes this evening.
I'll second that.
That sound good? All in favor, Bill Crenshaw,
Yes.
Natalie?
Yeah.
Yes, Bob?
Yes.
5-0 to approve the site plan as discussed with modification. Finally, I'll make a motion to approve the special permit to allow marijuana retail use in the downtown overlay district. Does this require, Bill, that we tie it to the conditions?
Yeah, it's subject to
Subject to the conditions as discussed in the hearing and presented by town staff tonight. Everyone, all in favor, Bill Crenshaw,
No.
Natalie?
Yes.
I'm a yes, Bob, Jim. So that's 4-1 in favor of the marijuana retail special permit. And you are all done.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good luck.
Take a cup there.
I need a recess. You're gonna recess, 3-minute recess. Thank you.
All right, Tim has.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Yeah, that's it, right, yeah. Yeah. Thanks, but Andy.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I guess it was 13-8.
You're right.
Yeah, well, that's why I was concerned about,
It was alluding to the.
Hey, drive up every day. I need to be on a bus. There like 10. Very much. Okay. Let's rejoin this. Are we unmuted?
Technology.
I will rejoin this meeting. The recess is declared over. And we'll move on to item 3.2. Sorry. Yes, 3.2. 141 Parker Street. The request is for a special permit. On behalf of Lex Vex Parker, did I get that correct?
That's, yeah.
Lex Vex, thank you. Phil, do you want to give us a primer on this and our responsibilities on this one? And we'll
Yeah,
go over that?
a couple of years ago, Mr. Blackman, the applicant, owner of 141 Parker Street, we amended the zoning bylaws to allow medical professional office. And there were two specific aspects of that come into a play here. And the board wanted to ensure there was a level of review because we hadn't had medical offices in the location. They're mostly concerned with parking. There are, so because of that, we made medical office a special permit use at this location. This is industrially zoned. This is not NBOD, it's industrial. The second part of this is that there are 89 parking spaces required, I believe, and I think it's 73 provided. The applicant has indicated that that's not a concern based on the current volume. And so what we're asking, what the board's being asked to do here is special permit approval with a accepting a reduced parking relief. To allow for the shortage of spots. I think it comes out to net of 7 spots, I believe. And so that's basically it. So you can see on the staff report, this is the type of business that that I think that the zoning bylaws were adjusted to encourage in our industrial zoned areas. We don't have many left, but we were trying to encourage something more than the traditional industrial use. So that's why staff is recommending this.
So this is a request for a use permit and a modification of parking requirements.
Just a granting of relief.
Granting of relief.
Yeah, it's the bylaws allow for the planning board to do this as the part of the special permit.
Thank you. Can you introduce yourself and your team for the record?
Of course.
Thank you.
My name is Jonathan Silverstein. I'm counsel for the applicant. With me is the principal of the applicant, Matthew Blackham. And we also have, in case the board has any questions about the tenant, and I'll get to who the tenant is in a moment. I do believe the representative of the tenant is available on Zoom if the board has any questions. And I'm sorry that. John Papa. John Papa.
Okay, thank you.
As you just heard, there are two forms of relief that we're requesting here. One is a special permit for use under section 312, the use table, for a medical office for a small portion of the existing building, a suite on the first floor of 2,811 square feet for use by a physical therapy office. The other form of relief we need is we're applying the 350, the one use for every 200 square feet versus 350 square feet for the current use as a professional office versus medical office results in a new parking requirement of 6 additional stops, which there is no room on the lot to provide, and so we're asking for relief from the board under section 6.4 of the bylaw as well. So I'll just walk the board through where we're talking about. Parker Street, of course, is right next to Maynard Crossing. And so you can see that this facade here, the building here, and there's Market Basket behind it. So this is actually a great way to orient yourselves in terms of the parking that's already available. That here is a row of single parking spaces that are part of this project, and then further towards the front, in front of the building are the remainder of the spaces. As you can see from this photograph, the lot is never full. It's usually about a third full, and that's with current building occupancy of about 90%. So there's never an overload on parking under existing conditions. And using this very small office suite on the first floor, we would submit is not going to change that, using it as a physical therapy office. So there's no external changes to the site being proposed. All that's being proposed is a change of use. An existing tenant, SWAT Environmental, is going upstairs to a different suite, and Platinum Physical Therapy is proposing to take the first floor suite that is currently occupied by SWAT.
That was me.
No problem. Although, again, on paper, under the bylaw, this would create a load of an additional 6 spaces, 14 versus 8. We really don't think that is going to present any practical problem, given that the lot is fairly empty all the time as it stands. And this is, again, a very small portion of the existing building. Nothing else is changing, just this use. I'm happy to run the board through the special permit criteria and how we think we satisfy them. If that's something that you'd like to hear, we do lay it out in the application, and I'm happy to save you the time on Valentine's Day if that's your preference.
Maybe we'll pause and ask the board if there's any questions at this point in time.
Yes, I do. Is this replacing a tenant that has left that space?
So that tenant is simply moving upstairs to a different suite.
Okay, but I mean, is this new space being created, or is this space that everybody's juggling around, but are they filling spots that were originally occupied?
So yeah, so the suite that we're talking about, I don't believe there's a change in terms of the square footage of the existing suites.
That's correct. The space that we're contemplating here in suite 111, that tenant is moving up to suite 205. The tenant from suite 205 has vacated the building. So the overall occupancy of the building will.
That's what I was getting at. You're just filling space, but the people that were there are going, so the parking would be replacing people that were there anyway.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board at this time?
What's the current ratio of parking for 1,000 square feet of building? Gross.
So it's 28,000 square foot building, and there's 73 spots.
That's good, thanks.
Okay. Again, not that it would ever be necessary, but we are right next to the crossing. And there's a pedestrian walkway here, just, or a vehicular exit onto that service road.
I'm not considering that as part of this use permit. But I did a few questions about this site. Are you modifying spaces? Are you restriping, anything of that nature?
No.
And that therefore you're not changing configurations for parking or traffic flow at all?
Nothing else.
So no traffic flow changes, no parking configuration changes. you're not asking for a reduction in parking, you're asking for the status quo parking, which just doesn't meet the criteria.
Exactly.
I've read the staff report. I don't need the applicant can go through, but if anyone would like the applicant to go through the staff report, just please speak up. Okay, good, okay. It's not needed, we reviewed the staff report.
Fair enough.
So, is that it?
That's all we have unless the board has any questions. It's just filling existing space with a user that happened to fall within a special permit use.
Any questions from the board? Any comments from the board? Any final comments from staff? I will open up for public comments. If you're online, please use the raise hand feature. And seeing and hearing no public comments. If there's no additional information to provide, I will make a motion to close the hearing, if that's okay.
Of course.
So motion has been made and seconded. All in favor to close the hearing by hand? 5-0 to close the hearing.
I think this is a new record, guys. It's very exciting.
And let me just get to the staff report. So,
Okay, would you like me to share that?
it doesn't hurt.
I have it pulled up, so. I can do it without, there you go.
So we'll cover a few things in the staff report. I see here that health agent had no comment, building commissioner had no comments,
I'm an agent.
conservation agents, administrator, was not, it's just not applicable today.
I'm not an administrator, I'm an agent.
It says administrator,
I know, I'm.
and you're not applicable. Julia is the conservation agent. It's Blair Humble, we have down engineer had no comment. Please have no comment.
It wasn't.
Fire, no comments. And all right, I'll make a motion to determine that the request meets the special permit criteria for use as described in section 10.4 of the zoning bylaw. All in favor by Royce, Bill Crenshaw,
Yeah.
Natalie.
Yeah.
I'm a yes, Bob.
Yes.
Yes, Jim, yes, 5-0. In favor of the special permit for use. I'll make a motion to approve the special permits. Oh, sorry. Did I get that wrong? I did mention, I did reference section 10.4, but I cut that first one right. The second one is to determine, to approve the special permit for medical office use for the subject for the subject property and granting relief as discussed this evening. Granting parking relief as discussed this evening. Thank you. And it's the second thing. All in favor by voice, Bill Crenshaw.
Yes.
Natalie.
Yeah.
I'm a yes, Bob.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's 5-0 for the medical use office use and the relief parking.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Fava, I'd like to welcome you to and thank you for bringing your business to Maine. The town appreciates it. We look forward to having you here.
Thank you so much.
And reach out if you can be helpful.
Appreciate it very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Who needs to be, this is all day.
You can just give me 1 minute before we go, and then I concluded this.
Yeah, we're gonna take a minute.
You'll see the one in the back we get to it. I printed out the one that version you made of the table. You look at it, you look like a mustache on the whole. Does anybody else need more?
Except for research. Your co-estimate.
What day is it? Oh, it's been- you got, that's in there.
So if for whatever reason it's stopped.
Grand screen.
You should.
All right, sure, you got it. I was just showing audio just to make sure it didn't screw up.
What I'm concerned about is. Doesn't look like it's. So,
1 minute, yeah, we could do.
guys, who's gonna take control?
You can do that?
Yep.
You're good?
Yep.
Okay, I will. Open up the. No, I guess we are opening up the hearing, it's a continuation. So we will continue the hearing. Item 3.3, we'll continue the hearing for the proposed zoning bylaw change for the temporary home-based business activity.
I put it in order just by, the, sequence. I'm happy to. I can't recall if we discussed the trade shop at our last meeting, but. If the board would like, we could, give you a little background on that, starting with the top. 3.1.2 takeaway.
So, yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine to turn it over to you, Bill, and then, I'd like to hear how the committee work is, the subcommittee work is done with you and Bill Crenshaw.
Yeah.
And then, we can look at the updated language and then, take additional public. Is that fair? Okay.
I'll start with this and then probably Bill has a lot, and add some more, maybe some of this, but the trade shop's pretty straightforward. When we were discussing, at our, I think at the last meeting, we struck trade shop as a category entirely. And, Bill and Brad Schultz from the, zoning board and I met with the building commissioner. And he pointed out something that was really, it was a good catch. A trade shop, the way you read this, it says accessory and other uses, understand? And the other uses, not just trade shops. So in our business areas, central business or industrial, whatever, we have a lot of opportunities where it's going to be a trade shop. And so it was important to make that distinction. The trade shop that we were eliminating was in terms of the home use one. So that will result in us having to re-advertise this, which is, at the end of the world anyway. But that was the reason for the trade shop change. So if there's any questions about that, I can try to address them. We also realized we needed a new trade shop definition. And there's a draft definition, so your very last page on this. Yeah, we went through. Here's what everybody agreed on is. A trade shop is a building, structure, or premises used by the practitioner of a trade or craft.
Is that what the building inspector
Yeah,
preferred?
yeah, but we're gonna we're gonna have to advertise this again, so we can.
That's what he preferred.
Yeah, that's what we prefer, right, yeah, but so the trade shop. Our original idea was it was too confusing, to have it as the home. Confused with the home occupation. So what we're proposing is that we continue with the idea of removing it from any residential zones. But ensure that it is protected as a use where it's appropriate in our business and industrial areas. That's the gist of it. That will end up being a new advertisement. Did I forget anything on that, Bill?
Yeah, so can I clarify? I think it would be helpful if the final version of 312 table A, where it has the trade shop at the end, that we had a reference that's really trade shop as the principal use.
Oh, in the text there?
Right.
Yeah, it's a good
Not as an
idea.
accessory use. So
Yeah,
theoretically, a trade shop under the proposed regulations could be an accessory use in other districts,
yeah,
but it's not based on the name trade shop. It's based on how intense the activity will be, or whatever it is.
it's a great idea. And if we're gonna advertise it, now it's time to do it.
Understand. The use table. From what I'm seeing still has trade shop under accessory and other uses. I'm
Right.
a little confused then.
Right, that's what it's,
Is that what you're saying?
Well. This is table 6 out of 6, right? The first 5 tables in our zoning bylaw talk about principal use. Like, okay, I want to put a gas station somewhere. You can put a gas station downtown, can't put it in S1,
and
right? But over the years, some stuff have actually just been thrown in this table 6 under the category of other uses. It's not an accessory use. And it's very sloppy and the building commissioner doesn't like it.
Yeah.
But basically this whole thing, like, the reference to craft marijuana cultivator, that's not really, that belongs in a principal use or something, but regardless, if the simplest way to make the fit and to provide the ability for somebody to put a principal use trade shop downtown or in a business district, then the reference would be, the very last line can say trade shop as a principal use.
It can't just go in another table.
It should go in the table and then, then you gotta edit that table. I mean, it could, those are 2 options.
So what you're saying, this is a stopgap measure? This is a simple solution, because the others, the better solution would be to
Right.
to fix all of table 6.
Since we're just spent 5 minutes talking about it, obviously the correct step is to put it in the principal use table. And since we have to re-advertise anyway, what's the difference?
you think pop it over in principal use then?
Yeah, right, it goes over there somewhere.
Then
Well, is it gonna go under, oh, I know why it wasn't in principal use, because it would be under industrial, or would it be under business? And this way they're saying other, because it could be under either.
So it's not done by zoning an accessory.
Yeah, those are just.
No, but if you're gonna look, if you're gonna look and you're
You'll
citing, all
find, you'll find.
right, you wanna move it if we
Put it under
kind
business, put it under business-ish.
does that mean? that
Business.
if- That mean it can't be? No, this table.
Because this says where, this says where. it can go.
Put, I mean, a trade shop is a business, so put it on the.
Yeah, put it under the business grouping table.
Now, do we reference trade shop still in our proposed zoning bylaw change?
we will.
No, but the problem is we were deleting all reference to it and that would delete reference to principal use and we're trying to retain that as an unintended consequence of.
I got it.
Accessory change.
I got it.
Okay. So that's all for trade shop use, so if anybody has any other questions on that.
So there has to be an article
Yeah.
adjusting the other table and adding
Yeah.
a definition.
We'll have to redo another, it's no big deal, but I mean, it'll be, we do have to
Yeah.
re-advertise it, we'll have another hearing.
Yeah. Do we have to change the definition now to include principal use? No, now it's built into it. 'cause it's in the front. Okay,
Right,
great.
right. And if you like, and we'll probably. The definition, I'll double check, that's what the building commissioner.
If he likes it, then I like it.
Yeah, he's the one who has to interpret it, so.
Okay.
Bill, one other thing on the first page, the 312 table A.
Yeah,
Something that came up at the earlier part of the hearing, the past meeting, the third item on that table
yes,
reads non-residential accessory use to non-residential principal use. That's actually a proposed change of wording to clarify that it's you know, talking about a bar in a hotel and not a bar in a house.
Oh, so this could be noted as new text.
Yeah, that's new text, because the existing, you can look it up, but the existing text is different and
Oh, I'll
not
fix that.
terribly
Okay,
clear.
great. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it says, those are accessory non-residents and use, and yeah, we're clarifying that it's non-residential accessory use only non-residential principal use.
Excellent.
Yeah, because that was brought up with the last hearing.
Oh, yeah, good lord.
Yeah, it showed
Yeah.
correctly on the screen.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the one. we uploaded.
So that's all I have from trade shops, if we can, everybody okay with that? No, you're gonna see that one now. Let's, how about we go to 3.2? There's no changes. Since you saw this last, I don't think. Nope. Everybody's still,
And Julie, if you can't keep up, just, tell us to pause and slow down, because I want to make sure this is visible for the public. record.
Yeah, I think I'm on the right one, right?
Right, the 3.2 is the same as presented last.
that we struck. Home occupation trade shop from it and added, Hamas.
The planner's 11, so. I'll go.
I mentioned this before, but we're striking the parent food for sale under 322. Doesn't,
Correct.
which is fine, it just doesn't seem. That's not associated with our home-based business.
Well, no, that would, these are all accessory uses, so, preparing food for sale would be a home-based business.
Okay, so
It probably doesn't have a noticeable impact, it would probably.
But you're pushing it down to be part of,
Right, because it's, yeah, it's not being allowed as of right, the taking of borders and the letting of rooms. We had made a discussion point earlier that, we're gonna talk about residential. Additional residential uses and stuff, at some other point in time. So we're just trying to get that one use back into the ABA category.
great.
All right, so here's go to that. 6.1.5, didn't change either. What this did was just eliminated the parking requirements for a home occupation, and we changed it to a regulated A3, which was
is this now the only item? I mean, it was before. Was this the only item in table C?
yeah.
I mean, do we need it anymore if we're just having table, if we just have section 8.3? Because it's discussed in 8.3.
Yeah, because it's found under, it's contained in the parking section from section 6. So it just kind of alludes to it, so it tells you. Oh,
But just, I don't think this is the only thing in table C, I think this is the change.
no, it's the only thing
We
that
got other
changed.
stuff, right?
Yeah, it's section 6.1.5.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. all right.
yeah, I misunderstood, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's got, half a dozen items in it.
You want me to pull that up, please?
You wanna see that?
Nope.
It's really well written.
I bet it is.
And now we go into, section 8.3, which to try to make it easier, we put a fair amount of time in it, since the, last meeting, but you'll see that we've, added little numbers, reference numbers. And then they can correspond with the table if anybody wants to know what comments were addressed and where they came from. We got a fair amount of comments. The table talks about, on the first page, gives you, the origin of them. And I think, I don't know, what's the easiest way to do this?
Just go one by one.
I mean, do you just want to go down our changes that we made and the committees made, or do you want to?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, let's give a better idea. I'm fine with that.
Well, okay.
So actually, Bill, the first change actually is not highlighted in the hard copy or the screen, but it really is a change of one word in the second paragraph. The last sentence of the second paragraph, now it's the character of abutting properties. The original text said adjoining properties, and the building inspector wanted the word abutting used. So that's what comment one is reference. Single word.
Two. Was just, I guess, the idea was that, each with a special permit, as the board is well aware, conditions. Can still be added to it's the same as any other special permit, depending on site specific, use specific, whatever the case may be.
We should have checked the text changes on the screen rather than the table. I think it's up in the table verbally, but it helps with the text is on it.
I think it's great to put that in. I think it'll help people, remind people that conditions are.
Yeah.
Allowed.
So as I was thinking about this and reflecting on the purpose and intent, I still struggle with the sort of, it's not enforcement side of it, it's the determination side of it, so.
Determination on what,
Well, yeah, so like. The way this is written, and I don't necessarily have a better way. But the way this is written is that we're implicitly looking to abutting properties to determine what is appropriate. And
yeah,
I think that's the crux of my, and again, I don't know a better way, but that's kind of the crux of the challenge I see with this still.
well,
And I'm not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's not like that type of thing. It's just, I don't, I'm wondering if if there's some other way that we can look at it. So that we don't have to rely on just observations and complaints from neighbors. Does that make sense?
it does, but that, the intent of this, remember, is that we're establishing type A businesses, which is an idea that is new to this. It's replacing what was the customary. A type A business is operating as a type A business. You wouldn't know it was that. That's the point of it. If there was a business that was causing a disturbance of sorts, presumably there would be a complaint. And then a determination would be made by staff going out there or code enforcement. If there is an impact there, and if in fact there is an impact, maybe it was initially reported by an abutter or a neighbor, or whatever the case may be, then they're not making a determination. the determination is gonna be, I mean, the determination we made.
Yeah, I'm not using exactly the right words.
Okay,
It's not a determination, but like. I don't know a better way. How do you figure out what the? Who judges what impacts are? I mean, yes, we'll be building.
Yeah, that's exactly it. The building commissioner is the zoning enforcement officer. Anything else, there's no other, that's in the law, so that is that person's job. Is it subjective? Yes, it is. It's a professional subjective opinion. And you could throw rocks at the way that, oh, this would be too arbitrary, whatever. And maybe the board doesn't feel that way if it goes to the board, or maybe they do. But the point is, the process is put in place to have this use examined by the permit granting authority. And if they don't need any regulation, they don't. And if they do, then hopefully it can be mitigated. It is, you're right, I mean, it was a hard one, and we recognize that, but that's pretty cut and dry. It's a zoning enforcement officer.
And that's the same as today.
The same,
If we don't change it, we still have that.
that's right.
So would you like to add language or no? Okay.
No, that's the big struggle. I still maintain with this, and like I said, I haven't heard, I don't have a better approach. But it doesn't, it's the same under both the current and the proposed. Maybe there's language, because this is the purpose section, maybe we could include language that references that. Determinations of impacts will be based on. The enforcement code or building commissioner or something like that. I mean, maybe there's a way to reference it in a purpose statement.
So,
Just so,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I would say just you would want to specify zoning enforcement officer, because that's not always, shall always be the.
I'm just throwing this out there, I'm not asking for this change, but I'm throwing it out there. Maybe if we can just in purpose statement, reference what the intention is. The intention is that, yes, zoning enforcement officer will consider abutting properties and residential character, but however, the enforcement will be based on the zoning officer's determination or something like that.
Well, we have to be a little careful that
You see what I'm getting at though?
well. Yeah, it's hard, but you gotta be careful that the zoning enforcement officer just says, hey, you need a special permit. He's not the one who decides whether they get it or what conditions would make it acceptable to provide it. That's all ZBA. So we gotta make sure we don't write them out.
And I think the purpose of the section is also to give guidance to the ZBA who is setting conditions for the special permit that they do issue, and also giving guidance to applicants who are looking at starting a home-based business and they say, oh, okay, I need to get 20 gallons of whatever chemical I'm allowed to have, not 30 gallons, right? So this is guidance for all of those people.
It is, and the other thing that we tried to do though, was make sure that people understood that there's going to be home occupations that don't require anything, because people doing whatever at home, they're class A,
Yes.
there's never a problem, you don't even know they're doing it.
Yeah.
And
I think another objective here is to make things a little more clear compared to today, because today we say customary home occupation is allowed no matter how large or small, and we don't say what it is. So can I have a accessory gravel pit at my house? I don't know, doesn't say I can't.
I get all that. And I'm thinking now there might be another, just in the purpose statement, we reference twice here in the second paragraph and third paragraph, there's references here to limiting activity or limitations deemed necessary to mitigate. I mean, Yeah, okay, that can be the purpose of the permit. But I don't know if that's necessarily the purpose of the whole section. I think the purpose of the section is more a little broader that says something like. The purpose here is to allow reasonable activity that will occur. When a home-based business activity is occurring. So we're looking at it from I'll just say, try to, I'm a little more succinct this time, what I'm reading here, the purpose statement is that. We're referencing that the purpose is to limit. And mitigate, but I think the purpose is also to allow. To allow reasonable activity.
It is, but the key, there's a key. A key essence of that, that it's going to be incidental. And that's kind of what I think we're the first paragraph saying that it is
Yeah.
incidental to the home.
Yeah, and maybe it's this last sentence, maybe it's like. Or maybe it's in here someplace where we just say, the purpose of this section, maybe it's the second paragraph. Is to recognize that particular professional. And, maybe it says something, okay, the purpose of the section is to allow for reasonable. Low impact activities. And recognize that particular professional limited business activities, blah, 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 blah. I just want some reference. I'm thinking that as I'm talking through this, what I'm settling on is that I would like to see some reference in the purpose section that allows for reasonable activity.
You don't want people to read this and say, oh, they're limiting everything.
Right.
And I can't open anything.
We're
It's a
doing
negative. You want.
I kind of think the first half of the second paragraph is trying to say that.
Well, it is, the problem is the word limited, they're not saying limited,
Mhm.
they're saying not a gravel pit.
Yeah,
They're not saying limited like we are limiting your business, they're saying particular professional and limited business activities.
Oh.
Meaning like,
Can we change that word to reasonable?
Well, the word limited.
right, let's just.
There
make
there
that
are
word.
particular professional business activities that work out great.
Yeah,
Yes, I think that would help.
just get rid of limited,
Get rid of.
particular professional and business activities.
now,
Yeah, DBA likes that, they like the word.
The purpose of the section is to recognize that particular professional and business activities are traditionally and inoffensively carried on in the home and to set standards. That's better. I do like the word reasonable, but I don't know how that plays in sort of going. So,
Reasonable, that's
Yeah.
dangerous.
yeah, okay, all right,
well, because then you're opening it up for more interpretation.
understood. And that's better to me, because now there's definitely a clear second paragraph, which is clearly saying to me that there's a recognition that these things are occurring, they're okay.
And I don't have an issue with the word limitations in the third paragraph because it's specifically referring to conditions.
Yeah,
Yes, I
We
agree.
could just say conditions deemed necessary to mitigate potential negative impact.
And I don't have an issue with that because that's part of this.
Yep.
But I also want to make sure that we're recognizing that we're looking to allow reasonable activity.
So are you saying strike or limitations?
No, I just said that out loud, but I don't know.
All right, so that's all I have. On that part. Thank you. I got one more.
I didn't know if you would- the problem.
I use a lot of words to change. one.
Yeah, well, it's an important point, because, a big part of this is,
Get it
make
back.
sure that the 90% of home activities that are not even noticeable are understood to be perfectly fine to do.
Should we continue on with the proposed?
Sure. Okay, let's see, where are we? Oh, 832. Change 3 was, we deleted the reference to materials and goods. That came from a cultural house, I believe.
Yeah.
They came from a food.
Oh, Linda Holt.
Oh, Linda, right, it was just on here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good,
That was a good point.
that was a good point.
Does that conclude ballpoint pens?
I'll let Bill explain the trailer. number 4
Oh, that's just,
with Brad and Bill had a good one time with us.
yeah, I mean, the reference to commercial vehicles is not great throughout our zoning bylaws, but here we're just saying, it originally just said you had a vehicle, one vehicle, but it's like, well, what if you have a trailer? On it? Yeah, okay. Because theoretically, you could, have the company truck and trailer home at night.
Right.
And, these are just,
Yeah.
Well, that's allowed now. You can have one commercial vehicle.
right, that's totally like that.
Right,
regardless.
I have a number of friends that have a painting trailer that, one axle painting trailer that they go behind. And they go to work. And come back.
And they work for somebody else.
Yes.
Right.
I don't wanna,
Yeah.
I don't wanna mess with that. That sounds perfectly reasonable.
But that's not their business.
No, we're saying this doesn't even apply.
Yeah,
If-
right.
If you're just bringing a company car home, you're a state trooper and you're bringing home your
Right.
cruiser, but you don't even read file. You're not.
That's big, not applicable.
Number 5,
Well, it's not.
was Bob. And then I met with Bill and Brad. Myself and a good, right off a good point about the difference between hazardous material and hazardous waste.
Right.
And a lot of this was, I don't know how it was, I should use the word refined. But when we had.
We funded it to the fire chief.
Yeah,
Good job.
I saw that. Oh, was it she? Was it? Oh, great. Is that the email that I read?
Well,
Oh,
or-
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
She's
No, I thought the one that I looked at today, the email correspondence that I saw regarding the storage of,
Oh, yeah, sorry, that was with the old one.
yes, thank you. I'm like, that
I
was,
apologize. I thought you were saying in the future.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I know that.
he'll be, and Chief Sowers he's around in administrative capacity, I think, for another couple months, I think. But anyway, that was what Bob, that was a good point about waste.
Bob, do you have any thoughts about that?
That's it.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, the
Um,
ZBA was like, well, yeah, they don't have the skills to figure it out. So.
No, yeah, no. Not our figure.
6, it was about the parking, it was removing the restriction about parking on landscaped areas. I think that was.
I think, have you heard, I remember, I had a couple notes on that.
Okay.
From a few different quotes. And even with
Moving on to 7.
Oh. Bill, this is right up your eye, that's one of the.
Number 7? Yeah, I mean, the point was made that. We didn't want to inadvertently, outlaw. Electric vehicles that are required by federal law to have a beeper when they back up, so, or make a noise when they back up, so.
should we include something like, or other federal statutes or something like that? I don't know.
Nope.
It seems
Nope,
very
National
narrow.
Highway Traffic Safety, they control it all.
Okay.
Nobody's taking that away from them.
Do we change it from hybrid and electric to?
It's too bad Brad wasn't here because he could explain 8, because I remember 8 was.
I mean, this is the language that the NHDF uses in their regulation.
Okay, so when we invent solar cars, we'll just revisit that.
Right, they don't have any rules about that. Right.
Why does that have to reference hybrid and electric vehicles though? Why can't it just be, because that would be every.
They're excluded.
it would-
Yeah.
Right, got it, that'd be every backup one.
Whatever it is.
I don't have a better idea.
So, yeah, it's clunky language, but yeah, the intent is, so.
Right, so let's deal with 8.
Deal with 8 was just something that came up in comment and make sure that we understood that this provision only applies to the business activity vehicles, the ones used and owned by the business, because some like maintenance and preventive maintenance is allowed. But if, we're trying not to say that, oh, well, by right, you could just open up a auto repair shop.
Right, okay.
If you wanted to do that, you'd have to go.
Take a look on your own vehicle.
That are owned by the business, yeah.
Yeah.
In accordance with the definitions of like maintenance and preventive maintenance that are. The DBA wanted.
They don't change it on oil anymore, but we could change it on oil on the RP.
Yeah, or you know, you gotta, you fix the welding on your snowplow or something.
Yeah.
Right.
Paint the brakes, sweet.
Change 9 was back a budding, will building commissioners abutting, versus adjoining. Or Jason,
9, no, 9. Well, there's a minor thing there. 9 is really a big rewrite of the special permit criteria introduction for a type B. Because the discussion had been that, the language, the original language, which is shown in red, which was copied from other sections in our zoning bylaw, was too confusing. So the proposed change in that suggested language is shown in blue to help break it down and make it a little more understandable.
and 10 was another one. I don't remember how I came up with the call of the universe. But it just it clarified that a commercial vehicle doesn't include vehicles used for what I guess it looks like, university and public service and that type of thing, but I can't remember exactly where it originated.
Well. Yeah, this language is really good from the building inspector, but. The conversation evolved and really it ended up, this is just redundant with the earlier section that says you can bring the company car home. The bill, when you get your company planning department car, your parking, take your meter down.
Yeah. And that is what we worked on since our last public hearing. But we,
Nicely, very concise.
it was, and I think our tomorrow. Yeah, is it tomorrow?
Yes, sir.
We're gonna bring the presentation. That the original presentation that we showed here, which was. I think it was pretty effective, but it was like, there's a lot of cleared up misinformation. And we're gonna bring that to the EDC. Tomorrow, we're bringing it to FinCom. A week or two, I think.
The end of February, the 27th.
Yeah, I mean,
I forget.
yeah. Paramount to get the support of all these.
I've reached out and asked to join an upcoming cultural council meeting to get further feedback from the cultural council. I find that discussions help more than, and I appreciate their letters that they've sent and their input thus far, but I find that conversations are more helpful. So I intend to continue to do outreach and receive outreach. Bill and I will track this outreach. Any members welcome, Bill, you're obviously welcome to join any of those meetings coming up. If you want, but you're also welcome not. Virtually,
Yeah, a lot of these things.
okay, that's kind of what I figured, but the offer is always.
I guess the question I need. Let's assume that we're gonna have a few more changes, right? If you close the hearing tonight,
I don't want to close the hearing tonight.
Well,
I wanna get that addition, I wanna get more feedback. Well,
yeah,
I'm happy to discuss it, but
well, no, but I'm just thinking of the calendar in terms of things, I'm saying. Either way, well, we're gonna have to advertise this again. Okay, so we know that's a given, well, now we can
Do we
even
know
have,
that, they're given?
yeah, I already remember, that was, we're trying to call with, Lisa, the attorney, yeah. Because, well, the trade shop.
The trade shop?
The trade shop itself, but, this stuff that we've done, this. Yeah, I think it's just. We've made some changes since then, but, I would say,
could we remove the trade shop changes, put them in a different zoning bylaw amendment, and just
Do a hearing for
advertise
that?
that?
well, I don't really, I think that would, I think that would leave us in a bad way.
Okay, never mind.
My suggestion for the trade shop would say, let's just plan on, we're gonna do the trade shop anyway. So, you know, and we do it, but we can do it at the same time, but that's, you know, only very minimal. If. I'm just trying to get in my mind how we were gonna advertise and make sure we have another hearing to hear, but we can do that, you can even do that the day of town meeting, I mean, it doesn't, you know, it's already been in the process. But, I'll leave it to the board and what they want to do, but if you're not, if
So
you,
Chris, when do you think you'll be done?
I'd like to wrap up in March.
Well, it's past the deadline for warrant.
So what are our options? We wrap up by next meeting, which would be the 28th. That too late? Do we, I mean, we don't have an option, if we have to re-advertise it, we have to re-advertise it.
well, the re-advertising, yeah, but there still is going to be at one point. We have, what we advertise, then we're gonna have to have a hearing on them to take it to town meeting, right? Because we're re-advertising because it's changed since the initial. Average, you know, in most of them.
Can we
Well,
re-advertise?
none of the changes have been more restricted. All the changes have been less restricted, so we shouldn't actually have to advertise. The one thing I do notice though, the trade shop reference does change has a right to a special permit, so that is a more restricted, but if we struck that. I would say that none of the changes are more restrictive and they don't need to be redone.
Well, I mean. We can run it by council, yeah, I mean. I would agree with you that, you know, I kind of, you know, to me. And it's in courts have heard things that have been. That have morphed somewhat from what they're initially advertised, you know, depending on what the change is. You know. And in this case, yeah, it's not. It's not loosening it up, so, but I would want to double check.
I think my perspective is, we need. If we're gonna need to re-advertise, sounds like. I agree to keep it together, I was kind of being playful and facetious with the idea of separating it, but
Yeah, I like that. I like
I
that.
kind of do, but it's kind of an end around, like I want this to be a package.
Well, then the only other option would be if we put it in fall. And I don't know if there's appetite for that on the board.
I mean,
Which board?
which board, this board or?
Any board.
I mean, I don't mind, I would rather get it
It's not,
right. I would rather prioritize more input.
well, and to clarify, I feel like what gets lost in the shuffle is that. We are redoing this because the language is antiquated, but also at the request of the zoning board. For all those people who think that we just do this for fun. It
Right,
was,
because they don't know how to interpret it.
right.
They don't know how to
because it's too
interpret the
unclear.
existing language.
Right,
Bill Crenshaw, if we continue this for March, which means that we would then have to work towards town meeting in the fall, what would you think about that?
That's insane. I mean, we're just gonna sit on it until August. And then we're gonna be back where we started. You gotta make a call.
what's the timetable for town meeting?
So, the deadline for, the draft warrant articles to the select board is Tuesday, February 20th.
Yeah, but deadline for citizen petition, for real day. The legal day, we got a draft, we can give.
Yeah,
The deadline for citizen petition warrants is March 10th.
We could, so we could continue to next.
we can give them the current, or whatever language we end up with tonight. And then we can always make changes based on, by the next meeting, you're gonna have met with FinCom and economic development and.
But the problem is whether we truly need to re-advertise.
All right,
But I don't know how the question was going to her.
yeah, can we ask her about what's the issue is that if the trade shop definition is more
The
restricted?
trade shop is, yeah, no, trade shop flat out said, we're adding a definition. The table's changed, that the trade shop has to have it.
Okay,
That one's,
Can we advertise,
Yeah.
continue this to March, February 28th?
Yeah.
And then look to close the hearing on the 28th and then get it to the town.
I don't think, I think we can do that. The only question I'm saying is that if we. If we said, all right, we're done with comments, after this point. Because then we're gonna, if we're not, then we're gonna end up doing amendments on the floor and all that stuff, and it gets messy.
Oh, yeah, I
And we
mean,
have to send Mr. Crenshaw up there to say, I'm gonna make an amendment.
So why don't we just put together a re-advertisement and a new article that simply adds trade shop to the principal use list and adds a trade shop definition.
That's a good.
And if he says that everything else can stay. that's
Yeah,
fine.
no question about it. No question about it, I agree.
But if they
But- but
want
what-
to,
but-
trade shop, then let's cut it out.
I will cut it out. I am not, I wanna make sure though that we're, legals. Well, if it had to be re-advertised, and we closed the hearing, we could have a new. Hearing anyway before town meeting. It's doable.
Okay.
I just don't want to get messy, and stuff. And, but I think we can do it. I mean. It's very important to get these next boards, boards and committees, it's crucial.
I, I like,
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
different
I agree.
perspectives and better public input.
If you continue it to the 28th,
Okay, so,
I'm gonna be out the first part of March, but Julie just got.
okay, so we talk timetable. I want to get to public comments and then I want to continue this to the 28th, it would be my plan. So for public comments tonight,
Well,
Yep.
sorry, timing wise.
Mhm.
If we do trade shop. As a principal use and a definition as a separate thing. We have a logistic thing and a timing thing that we have to send it to. Select board.
I
and
guess
have
that's
to
fine.
kick it back. Right, but we have to make sure we do that. And hit the select board meetings, so they can kick it back to us on our meeting schedule.
Yeah,
So-
that has to, yeah. Well, the select board article, if we
So
put
if
a
we're
warrant,
gonna do that, I suggest doing it tomorrow.
so get it to the select board first, is that what you're saying?
No, if we're gonna have a separate article.
Yeah.
For. The single line of trade shops moving into principal and adding a single line definition of trade shops, that has its own. Article change hearing the whole bit. We stupidly have to give it to select board first, so they can give it back to us, but that can take 3 weeks. So.
well, that
That's
doesn't,
like-
yeah, but it has to be referred back, but we could still. If it's, we have to advertise it though. That's what I'm saying.
I'm just saying.
Right, no,
Tomorrow.
I trust you guys if you
Yeah.
think that plan works.
I don't think that's an issue. I'll take care, I'll get a scooting right away.
All right, so for public comments tonight, to ensure that we continue for an orderly meeting, I have some guidelines that we've taken from the code of conduct and other items in town. So the procedure is pretty simple. We're gonna raise hand and the chair will recognize each individual. When you're recognized to speak, please state your name and address. All comments and questions need to be directed to the board through the chair. Please, we'll have a limitation of 2 minutes, which is pretty standard practice for comments in town. And statements and questions need to be limited to the topic at hand. Talk only about issues that are under our jurisdiction, please. So I'll start tonight with members here in the community, if there's any public comments that want to be provided. Okay.
Donna, I'm sorry, Donna Dodson, 123 Summer Street. Yeah, I made some notes to try and stay on track. So I haven't spoken, but I just want to make a public comment.
You may just take your mask.
Oh, sorry. Is that better? So, I, first of all, just applaud the efforts, obviously extreme amount of effort gone into this, to update the language, to receive the comments and improve the bylaw. It all seems very reasonable. My concerns are with some of the comments I heard at the meetings. Some were directed towards myself and my husband. I just wanted to clarify that it's not true. It's never been true that we're conducting any illegal business activity. It's our understanding that it's not true or has never been and will never be true that the ZBA or planning board are writing bylaws that would allow the boards or the town to approve illegal business activity in the town of Maynard on residential property and others. Want to make that comment. I also heard comments that living next to accessory use has driven down property values. And I just fact checking, I looked at property cards, for example, on our street. As far as I can see, everyone's house has increased significantly since we moved here in 2015. Furthermore, just based on my conversations with a number of realtors, there's only limited housing stock in Maynard, therefore most houses actually sell over asking. Some of the recent sales on our street were record highs. So I just, property values tend to go up based on improvements that are made by the owner or also sales of homes nearby or in town. I wouldn't want anyone listening to think that living next to an accessory home business would decrease their property values. It's simply not true based on what the research I've done.
Fine.
If you have any comments about the proposed language changes, I'll happily accept that too.
One more, yeah, sorry. So just 8.3.4 number 6. Can I suggest that the language would restrict excessive noise? Vibrations, flares and fumes.
And can we bring that up on the screen if that's possible?
Would you still like a timer at this point?
We're going to look at a.
8.3.4 is a type A business. I'm not sure if you mean type A or type B.
I'll say it one more time, Donna, please.
8.3.4, number 6.
The first one, type A, the image you comes up
Oh, it does. Okay.
under 8.3.6,
Okay.
item L, those
Okay.
vibration glares, future orders.
Sorry, hold on. Let's just cover it. So 8.3.4.6. The AHBBA shall not generate noise vibration.
I apologize, everyone. I
Oh,
double-checked.
Oh, yeah. And I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is.
I understand. I know you're trying to clarify. Thank you.
Get that pulled down up top, yeah.
The AHBBA shall not generate noise, vibration, glares, fumes, or odors discernible beyond the property line. What is?
I was suggesting the language would be shall not generate excessive.
All right, so the
Or
point here
8.
is, this is the trigger line between an A and a B. It doesn't affect the other property line. It's an A and they get to do it and there's no requirement. If it does, then the ZBA needs to think about it.
So let's go to the. Let's go to 8.3
What was it?
points.
Type B is the net.
Okay, so under type D, yeah,
I think that is 8.3.6,
thank you.
item L.
Yeah, yep, and so then if it's if a noise, for example, is above, that goes outside the property line, then this would trigger a review for a type B, which is then regulated for. Well, you go to L, or if you go to 386.3. L, it says noise, vibration, glares, fumes, and odors discernible beyond the property line. That's the same thing.
So,
Okay, it says under-
no. So this section here is saying, if this circumstance exists.
Yep.
The ZBA. Could prove it and say, you know what, that's great, it's not a big deal, but they have to specifically say it's not a big deal. And they could put conditions on it or whatever, all these things listed in A through N. Can be approved by the ZBA, they just have to specifically approve it. That's all it's saying, it's just a list of stuff they have to specifically say, that thing, that activity is okay. And they will, if they determine that it's excessive, then they probably won't approve.
Or we'll put conditions.
Or we'll put conditions on it, but this is just defining the things for which they have to make a specific finding. And specifically talk about, to specifically say is okay. And just because they okay, number L, doesn't mean you can do G.
Okay.
They would have to separately say, oh, you want more than 2 customers, then that's okay too. This is just a list of stuff that the ZBA wants to consider and has to individually approve.
Is that correct?
Mhm.
Any other comment?
Andy,
Oh, go ahead.
okay, my concern is about David Mark and Maple Street Maynard. 8.3.6. Items A through N, as has been pointed out, need to be considered because if any of these could be reasons for not allowing a special permit. So each would individually have to be considered if there's a concern. So for example, B, use of an accessory building, could be a garage or a barn, would then have to be considered as a criteria for not allowing a special permit. I think L is unnecessarily vague because it doesn't define what noise is. Are we talking that someone standing on the property line is hearing a whisper, 50 decibels? Or is it an outboard motor engine, or is it a jet plane? So some of these may be just a better definition for L. What's glare? Is it, I have some lights on and you see the lights, or I have a spotlight shining on my neighbor's yard, or so bright that I'm playing basketball at night. So I think L might require some definition of what is noise. It could be excessive noise, is also still subjective. But I think there's a consideration. And I also want to say, and then I think the 2 vehicle visits per day is too restrictive. Because, and that's item F, because that's defined as, let's say someone dropping off a student, goes home, comes back and picks up the student. That's your 2 visits. Even though you say there can be 4 students there, 1 parent dropping off 1 student, has used up the 2 visits for that day. Also, this has nothing to say about customers showing up by foot or by bicycle, but there, I think specifically this question of finding vehicle visits needs to be revisited.
And that's section F, I think.
Okay, and if I could just do one more, E, customers, clients, patients, or other visitors. Because other visitors could be family, friends. I'd like to think that if they're visiting a business and the person who runs that business wants to show off what they've got, they should be able to do that without interfering with property value as a whole, interfering with the property value. So I think other visitors is also unnecessarily restricted, and I'll stop.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Well, those are good points, but what Bill's saying, David, I think the question is, it's not saying you can't have more than 2 visitors a day. It's saying that if there's going to be more, that would be something the special permit would address. So for example, we've done, I don't know, it's a specific use where we say, okay, the person was a professional office, you can, and they've limited it to like 2 visits per hour. But the point is that is specifically addressed in the permit. it's saying that if they're gonna consider it, if there's more than 2 business-related visits a day, then it's something we have to consider in issuing a special permit. So let's say, you could have saying that the board, whatever board, and most of the time it's gonna be the zoning board. But that's a good point, and
I mean, I like to think of it as, it's not a yes and no list, it's a, oh, let's talk about it list. And
Right, that
that's fine.
if these are the issues being brought up, they need to be specifically looked at by the zoning board.
Yeah.
Or,
I said this board, I meant the
Yeah.
zoning board, but like with the zoning board, for example, we just had a psychologist. And they said, okay, well, how many do you have a day? Okay, we do so 2 an hour, whatever it was.
And, the other thing about this activity stuff is. It's one of the things I think is the biggest problem we have with our existing language. Because if I have a customary home occupation. It's completely silent on hours or number of people or anything like that. I can just do it. And this is just saying, well, let's talk about it before we say it's okay.
I have a perspective to add to this. How do you distinguish between a business visit and a personal visit?
That's the zoning ordinance agent's problem.
I mean, that's
I
like,
can just see how, but I can see how someone can be like, the permit says 8 visits a day.
well,
They had a
yeah,
birthday party,
yeah,
does that, like, it can get convoluted.
yeah, it can, but a good, if it's done in good faith, garbage is done in good faith. You say, okay, wait a minute, this wasn't a business, this was my aunt and visit. Or something like that, yeah, it could get, I mean,
There would have to be an exchange of goods.
there's gonna be only so many,
Rick knows the difference between a birthday party and a.
I think.
Or I'm just, I
Yeah.
guess there's a larger thing here, like, I'm looking at it just, like, something like that could be used by someone not in good faith, just providing leverage.
Oh, sure, well, the same with the lawnmower. That's what we just have, we're going to lawnmower. When I mow my lawn once a week. You're hearing the lawnmower in the residential neighborhood. So is it a guy starting a lawnmower for 15 minutes and running it 3 times a day, 15 minutes? Is that impact something that's unusual in a in a residential area? That's true. I mean, you can. Yeah, you're right, though, there can be it can be sticky.
Yeah. If
And
there's,
particularly if somebody wants to.
if there's any way to improve, I don't know how to improve that.
I mean, the reference to other visitors, I mean, is that the issue? I mean, we just. Others too broad and.
Yeah.
Just get rid of the word, just the reference to other.
And where's the reference other?
I think it's an E.
Customers, clients, students, other visitors. Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Maybe E is just, have to get clarified. It says. Business related visits. Business related visitors.
Is that a change? Are we good with that?
Something like that.
Customer client. Yeah, right, so you don't want the word customer client, you want,
The other visitors,
because the point is, this is not talking about employees.
right?
We're not talking about the business owner going making deliveries.
AHBBA visitors
And that's consistent with that.
to the premises.
We referred to in F, we referred to
Yeah.
a business related vehicle visit.
All right, well, you want business related visitors to, I get it. Well, business related. What do you want?
Business related
Visitors
visitors
to the AHBBA.
on the premises. Other than on weekdays between the hours of 9 and 5.
Yeah, fine, yeah, neither,
I think that would be reason
yeah, I got
to
you.
consider. Does that clarify a little bit better? I don't think that completely gets at my concern, but I think that helps.
Right, and yeah, it stops some unintended consequences, that's good.
Yes. That DNG, maybe DNG, yeah. But the other thing, maybe.
Oh, yeah. And I do like the comment of the loophole here is that, you know, they all come by bike. We don't say anything about that.
Well, see, our concerns are mostly about vehicle traffic. So I think,
But we're not hearing the special permit rate. Just helping you like that. Right, so then this is up to the zoning.
right. Well, yeah,
Well, the zoning board's never been bothered by pedestrian activity.
I'm gonna think more about my comments, my last comment. I think that helps.
and can I just address L? So noise, vibration, glare, fumes, odors. The problem with trying to define it. Noise, our town does not have a noise ordinance to begin with. Trying to use town resources to determine the noise level at property lines is something that is just not feasible at this time. Not that I'm saying we need to, you know, not do things because they don't feel feasible, but in terms of enforcement, I feel like the town does not have the capacity to, that is going to have to be a judgment call at a certain point.
It is today and it will be tomorrow.
Right, there's really no other way of doing it. I mean, when I got chickens, the animal control officer came and told me how many I could have and where they could be on my property based on my neighbors. It's a similar thing that it's going to be different. If you have a property that's like an acre sized property, it's going to be a different situation based on the proximity of the abutters. I do feel like at a certain point, there's no way to define that. And all of the other towns, so I've been looking at other guidelines provided, you know, in other cases, it does not seem to be something that can be defined by decibel level or things like that. I think when it comes to fumes, we're talking to the fire chief about storage of chemicals, right? I think when it comes to vibration, we're talking about numbers of vehicles and things like that. I mean, I'm just not sure. When we get more nitpicky than that, it just leaves less room for logical interpretation.
Okay. Any other public comments?
Sorry.
Andy Waller, 123 Summit Street. I want to thank the planning board, the ZBA, and Mr. Nemser for their leadership in updating our antique bylaws concerning home occupations. I applaud the work that's been done, and I expect to support your amendment. I just want to be sure my ideas and voice have been heard. I've been fully present during this process and pretty much unallowed to talk because there was so much time and energy put into other things. I see the new language no longer considers community value as a supporting tenet of business activity. That concerns me as a taxpayer. Our tax base is almost totally dependent on residential property. We need to increase residential values, or we will be forced to add more housing by subdividing already non-conforming lots, or we must slash services. This is a clear edict of the 2.5 limits on budget. Home-based businesses provide value. The improvements in monetizing of garages, outbuilding, and historic barns should be encouraged for business use. If independent entrepreneurs can monetize these types of currently undervalued and poorly utilized residential infrastructure, they will invest, they will bring individual home assessments up and concurrently improve neighborhood home values. That's what's happened in our neighborhood, that's what's happened around us. I have concerns about the way an accessory business activity is being held to a different standard than other residences in the neighborhood. This is a customary measure that clearly attacks the maker, the trades, the physical laborer, and builds that build and protect infrastructure value in our society. These workers will never be invisible. Neither are dogs, children with basketball courts, leaf blowers, and the traffic of Summer Street. All of us have impact, and these impacts should be equally applied to any person who can generate an accessory business use of their home. We should be all equal. That's all I ask.
Thank you, Andy.
No problem. Excuse me for being emotional. This is very great.
Andy, I think you're allowed.
What can I do? Clarification is clarifying whether, I thought I heard that the changes remove that versus it's just never been in there, and I mean, I've always considered that, you know, the special permits always consider value because that's the basic premise of 10.4. The good outweighs the bad, that's 10.4. So I didn't quite understand if the comment was that a recent change in the proposed language had altered that.
That's a question, and if you, from a board member, if you would like to clarify, I-
No, I think that the language is better. I applaud you. I think it's a long way from being equitable or fair to all that encompass what Maynard is. I mean, if we want to drive out all the small businesses that operate from their homes that make any noise at the property line, I hear vacuum cleaners on the property line from my neighbors. You know, I mean, dogs who bark for 45 minutes, that's a huge amount of noise before the animal protection moves in and says you can't do that anymore. You can bring your dog in for 15 minutes, he can go back out and bark for another 15 minutes. And I can't cut something out in my front yard for a few minutes and then put it away when they came in. I think that there's room here to find definitions that work. They've set definitions for the animals. Why can't we set definitions for businesses? If we want to restrict all businesses from town, I think that we're going to end up with a real problem, and I've sent notes to that effect. What I've seen in Switzerland and other countries that have restricted and restrained, the workers come up in the white vans, they're all third world speaking languages, and they're the ones who do all the work on your house, and it costs a lot more. And you work through Maynard. I think it's a class issue.
I think I understand it.
Anyway, I went off subject.
I think, yeah, there used to be the, you know, the community benefit was one of the criteria that the accessory, you know, it used to be under a different definition than the current language, but it used to be one of the metrics. So there was a community need that was being served. Either it's just like you're providing a business, and so your customers keep you in business, so you're providing a business service that is needed in town. Or I've seen it interpreted in other ways, that the businesses, you know, in our case, I don't mean to use us, but that we give time on board or something, you know, that there was, but that was actually, it was like spelled out. And
There was I know, if I was the introduction that we had an introduction, it was not part of the Bible, I know, we went about in the,
Was it like a year ago when we?
yeah, it was an introduction, we talked about where, who benefits from, you know, from home-based businesses, the advantages were, yeah.
Yeah.
That was the introduction that we had. It wasn't designed to be in the bylaws. I could see where, I know what you're talking about.
You have that in the slideshow,
In the slide deck,
Slide
yeah.
deck has that.
Yeah,
So, you know, it highlights the need for that conversation to be out there.
yeah, yeah. We have the new slide deck that we did on the.
Maybe this is something to revisit in the sort of purpose intent. In a way,
Well, I mean,
because we can't bake in. I don't know, I think it's a helpful perspective, and I want to find ways to. I want to sit with that. If that helps.
Well, I mean, I still maintain that the existing 10.4 special permit criteria does exactly that. So the bottom line on that is the good outweighs the bad.
Let me make one more comment. Thinking further on this question of defining, I'm gonna back off from trying to over-define noise, because if I'm in an apartment and the person in the apartment next to me with a shared wall is using power tools, and I'm hearing that there's vibration going on, doesn't have to be very loud, for a lot of vibration to be really, really annoying, especially if I don't know what hours they're using this, and I'm trying to take a nap or get my kid to go to sleep. So I think it has to be left to the board and other groups to define each case as they go, but not be overzealous.
Fair. I'm gonna take comments online. If you would like to provide a comment, please use the raise hand feature and we will. And I will allow comments through Zoom online for another few minutes. If you care to provide comment, please raise your hand and we will call on you and unmute you. And unless I see a hand, we'll continue on. Any other thoughts or feedback from the board?
Well, just related to an earlier discussion point about the business related, the zero text changes in 836, it would also need to be made.
Yeah, oh, and 834.5.
They're all the same.
Okay. Is everybody good if I make those changes for the?
You can make them on the.
Proposed, I'm fine with that.
Are you closing public comment?
Yes, let's close public comment. Can I turn to the board to get their general feedback and the direction of this, just to get your temperature on it? How do you, I'm okay, yeah. Bob, what are your thoughts?
I'm okay with it. It's a really hard issue because what we're trying to do is to allow people to undertake reasonable activity without causing undue interference to their neighbors' quiet enjoyment of their property. So that's what the discussion is. And of course, you know, the activities lead to some dispute. And so we're putting in a process by which those disputes can get resolved. So as far as trying to work that through and define it, I think, you know, we've done a really good job. And I commend you for all the work you put into it. And, you know, if people think we could do it a little better, give us some ideas and we'll certainly run with it. But, you know, there's always two sides. So we're trying to figure out how do we strike that balance.
I mean, I do understand the concern that, right, the list in 8.3.6, the letters A through L or N. I do understand that some people will look at that list and say, oh, if I'm gonna use more than one on-street parking space, then I guess I'm not allowed to be in the town of Maynard. That is not what we're saying. That is not what we want. The point is that we have encountered problems. The zoning board needs guidance to deal with these problems. These have been identified as common areas of concern. So therefore, they will need to be addressed individually. Believe me, I have hobbies that are loud. And thank God I don't make any money off of them because I know, you know, like it is hard. It's impossible that there's a line there. But at the same time, where there has to be a line somewhere, right? Do I think Maynard should have a noise ordinance? Absolutely. Do I have time to write one? Absolutely not. So someone else should do that for sure. Like, I know that there are concerns about, you know, I hear vacuums too, but we can't do everything all at once. And I think in the meantime, we have to write guidance. We have to trust our boards. And if you don't like the boards, join a board. We all need more people, right? That's all you can do, you know? I mean, everyone who's on one of these stupid boards is a volunteer and nobody is doing it because they're trying to, I don't know.
Can we clarify that?
All right, you know, I'm just saying,
Everyone's.
I'm just saying, I think that all we can do is give people guidance and give people a lot of leeway to go either direction. And we're just gonna have to trust that the zoning board and that the zoning boards. Shit, what's the word? The guy who enforces enforcement officer will do their best.
Bill Crunch, any final thought?
My basic thing is, it's way better than what we got now.
I have two final thoughts. One is as a sort of premise to how I approach this position, I think about one of my principles is continuous learning and growth. So I don't look at this as the end all be all. I look at this as getting it to the place where it deserves to be passed and then spending time learning from it. We always, I always look at zoning and even the past few years as opportunities to learn where we can improve. So I will continue to look at this, how to improve this, but I want, once I'm ready and comfortable where it deserves to be passed, I will be looking to try to pass it. And then learn from it, and then make more improvements if it's needed. My second thought is I agree that it would be helpful if we can find ways to, bake in the sort of equity discussion that I heard tonight, and I don't know how to do that anymore. But I will revisit comments that have been provided in the past. And to see what can be done, maybe it's with the purpose of intent, maybe it's just to re-highlight the 10.4 section and the applicability of that. And maybe it's, I don't know, so, that's where I'm at. And I really appreciate all the efforts on this, because I think it's valiant and it's been extensive. Planning board updates, Bill?
Yes,
Oh, should we continue this?
we should continue,
Over here.
right.
Or not? Continue?
We're gonna continue it to the 28th.
The 28th.
I'll make a motion to continue this hearing to February 20. All in favor, all in favor by hand. 5-0 for continuance. Planning board updates. All good, Julie? Yeah.
Do we need action on pursuing, the trade job thing as a separate? hearing?
You should direct me to prepare it and submit it to the,
Can the chair just do that? I think the chair can just direct you to do
I
that.
don't know, I guess so.
I don't, there's no, yeah,
Yeah, I guess so.
yeah. the
And
chair
then I'll
directs
bring
you
it, and
to
I'll-
do that.
yeah. I'll do that tomorrow. I'll submit it. We'll do the, send it to the select board. Will come back. Also, can we hit these minutes, these old minutes? We haven't got, I don't have the last minutes. I've got it January 10th one.
I have a problem with one thing,
Okay,
where the second thing, colors present. And let's see,
no, it has you not present?
oh, wait a minute. Public hearing,
Okay.
oh, yes. Made a planning board members present, Chris Alpha, chair, Jim Coleman, vice chair, I'm not vice chair,
Oh,
Mr. Brown.
yeah, Mr. Reynolds. Where is that? Jim?
Right top, full copy and paste.
Oh. Okay, I'll make that.
Thank you for the elevation.
Well, you were last year's. Right there.
Yeah, I was last year.
That's how long these have been sitting around, these minutes. See?
Thanks a lot.
Tell you not to do the minutes one time.
Yeah, that's right. Look at, they're talking about President Truman's address. It's.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I got the. Move to approve the minutes. No. I got two changes on the screen. Second last paragraph, first line,
On 3,
eighth grade, second to last paragraph. First line, everyone went, don't double. Double negative,
Get rid of doesn't.
yeah. Get rid of one.
Well, maybe that's what the comment.
Yeah.
that's okay.
And then the second paragraph under the accessory home business activity, the second full paragraph on that page,
Uh-huh.
a couple issues with it. The last line mixes up A and B. And it also shouldn't say pipes, it should reference activities. So I suggest that the last line be rewritten as the amendments have business activities sorted into groups A and B. Those as of right and those requiring special permits.
Those as right.
And then also in that same paragraph, the first line references just hairdresser, real estate trade shop, it really should also reference customary home occupation.
Where's that though?
The first line in that paragraph.
Change the first line to historically, the definitions have been customary home occupations.
A comment, hairdressers, real estate,
Yeah.
and trade shop, it's all true, but it's leaving out the.
Got it. Okay.
I will draw my original motion and make another motion.
What's the amendment? To approve the amendment?
Yeah.
I'll second it. All in favor to approve the minutes with the amended. 5-0 to approve the minutes. Oh, sorry, the minutes for January 10th.
Right.
Yeah.
Planning update?
Planning up.
Very sad planning update, but we're losing Megan to Concord. And Megan will be leaving us first week in January.
You really want to do this?
I'm at January from the old minutes.
We're going to amend that.
Yes. This is the.
I mean, good for
Second
her.
command.
Yeah.
Very exciting.
Good for her.
Right, and she started on this board.
Mm.
And maybe they'll, hey, there's a small brief window where she's not allowed to,
We're talking to the AG.
cool off period, 1 year, but then she come back. So what, we're trying to recruit her.
Yeah, right.
I don't, yeah, she's not still on.
Yeah.
You're gonna have plenty of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think Billy will.
The other thing is, the Powder Mill Corridor initiative. We had a meeting again on last week, and they're going to be planning a series of visits to our boards and Banana, so they're. It's good.
Originally, we designated Bob to be our interface on that. Can you just make sure, if you're still up for it, Bob? Can you still make sure that Bob's coordinated and
Yeah,
can help, you know,
Bob should,
be our representative?
yeah,
Or
I
they
should
should
bring you
go
into
to
these, next time we have a meeting.
If you're still willing. Yeah.
Like, he's like,
It's 10 o'clock. 4.5 hour meeting.
on Valentine's Day.
I'm Valentine's Day.
Let's go.
You gonna talk to my wife?
We could Zoom call.
Natalie, yes.
I have been serving on the Community Preservation Committee, and I would like to no longer do so, and we need some member from the planning board, so it's something to consider. That after this current funding cycle is voted on, I'm not planning on participating anymore.
Well, we should talk to Annette too.
Yeah, we can have a conversation about it.
Yeah, did you already put that out? In our group, in the planning board before?
Yeah, I've been talking about quitting for a long time.
No, I know that.
Yeah. I didn't get a lot of interest, so I'm just putting it out to everybody.
Are we required to provide a member?
Well, we,
Yes.
yeah, but they're always an active member from all the boards who are required to provide one, no, so.
So it will be like town meeting is basically your official cutoff? Or July 1? Or do you guys not really do anything
We don't
until
really
after? Okay,
Do a lot in between.
so is there like a time frame of when we need to get someone like definitely here?
No.
September would be.
Yeah.
September.
would be-
Okay, it's good to have even a arbitrary date.
Okay, duly noted. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How can we get Megan?
So the item we had here, and I'm kind of reluctant to bring it up since I've just had 2 members comment on the amount of effort we've already putting into the group activity, but Jim Coleman brought up an idea to Bill and I about having maybe a meeting outside of our current cycle to discuss big picture items. But Jim, I'm happy to hear what your thoughts on But I think the timing on this is terrible. We'll talk about it next week.
No, we always end up with a discussion item that we don't get to.
Yes.
My thought was that perhaps we could have a generalized meeting just to talk about the stuff that we don't bring up because we get to the end of the meeting. I mean, we run out of time on doing the stuff that we have to do. But some of this stuff that we should do, we don't get to. So I thought perhaps another meeting off grid, so it might be appreciated.
Those are the most fun meetings anyway.
I'm sorry.
Those are the most fun meetings anyway, so I'm on board.
Well, I didn't think about it as a fun meeting, but okay, fine. Let's have a little fun meeting.
Perfect.
Could find a time that's pretty reasonable, doesn't have to be at night, it could be on a weekend or a morning. Afternoon.
We wait till after town meeting, you think of that one?
Sure.
We're talking about like the goal setting.
I'm thinking more like maybe quarterly, we just have a Saturday and donuts, coffee, and we talk about some of these other sort of large plans that we want to do.
Just to be clear, it would still, you know, you'd still need quorum, so it would still be a publicly accessible
Yep.
meeting.
Yeah.
We just wouldn't schedule any public hearings for it.
I think that the guy that brought up the idea of coffee and donuts should bring them.
I can tell that, yeah, it's-
Yeah, if ADUs have to happen eventually, we should start talking about it.
Well, you should, right now, you know, who's in the middle of that one now?
Yeah.
Oh, Deerfield.
Really?
Have you been reading? Oh, yeah, they got a good one.
Good, I'll read about it.
Oh, this
And that's in the planning stuff, but.
It's gonna be, these can be planning for planning, that will be the meetings.
Yeah.
Planning for planning. So anyway, Jim had a great idea and I wanted to get some feedback.
Oh, thank you for it.
Maybe a spring coffee and donuts. Yeah,
Good for me.
okay.
With the Zoom option.
It's just, it doesn't have to, it's just that you have to advertise it, there's a form,
Oh, you want-
where you have to add it.
Well, we don't, well, I did also mention, we don't know if we will be doing Zoom. They have not renewed our,
Yeah.
hybrid or virtual
When's
option,
that, June?
March.
And is it the end of March?
Yeah, but to be fair, last year they waited until like the exact hour
Yeah.
that they had to renew
And we
it, so.
advertised everything and.
So there's a chance, everyone has said at the state level that like it's looking like they're gonna renew it, but just to keep that in mind, and to those in the public.
For this board, we've been meeting in real life anyway, for the most part, so.
You're
Zoning doesn't mean at all.
It's nice to have the option.
You guys, the conservation's online.
You guys are the only ones, yeah. that-
Chris, before you go, I got one little thing.
I'm sure good.
The construction of 115 has taken the sidewalk away,
Yeah.
and it now requires me to cross the road 6 times to get to the deli and back. And of course, nobody does that. And every week, going to these meetings and another meeting, I'm always almost running over the same guy who's walking in the road alongside the construction site. So I'm hoping that's a very temporary condition. Because if it's gonna last forever, they should be doing something else than pretending that people are gonna cross the road 6 times.
I recommend taking your complaint to the Department of Public.
Well, it's supposed to be a condition of project.
That the
It's
sidewalk,
brought up in the hearing.
that the
That
sidewalk
sidewalk
would remain
always
open.
remain open.
So there was a public safety concern, we had to close the sidewalk. Because it was gonna fall, so.
Is that condition still? Tell you what, comment noted, and we'll figure out if it's, there's some. We'll figure out if it ties to the decision. And if it does, then we'll figure out what to do next.
But the normal way would be to use part of the road and protect the Jersey barriers and make the pedestrian pathway there. Is what
Yeah.
frequently happens.
Yeah.
But you're saying they dug too much, now the sidewalk.
It needed to be, my understanding, it needed to be done urgently. And that was the, anyway, that's as much as I am. But yes, you're right, maybe
No question.
there's clearly a better permanent condition.
And that is not a permanent. That's a temporary condition until they are allowed to start building, and I think that another option is Yeah.
But to clarify, this does, I mean, one can't help but. Attract me.
I mean, there's people walking down the street in the dark
Yeah, we completely
and
understand your concern.
it's the same guy.
The crosswalk that was painted goes literally into the CVS driveway.
And those are temporary.
Well, it's good, because a lot of people were asking for that. Let's see, yeah, so now you can.
Don't I
that
know
makes-
it? Don't
Yeah.
I know it? It's not given to them for a long time.
Look, that kind of thing, you're absolutely right. I mean, Bill's right. It was in the conviction and you guys are right. But the reality is, it's one of those things, one person gets hold of it. And they're walking on the street and they're afraid and it's a safety issue and that's all you have to say. And by God, they didn't close it off and somebody went tumbling in that pit or something.
Oh, I mean,
Oh, my God. No. It's not ideal and there's, I'm so glad when that project's done.
It's, yes, so I think. So we've heard comments, I'll work with. I'll work with Bill to see if there's a compliance issue, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah, this one's kind of out of my hands, but I mean, we're trying to get it going, that's for sure. But yeah, the day when it first happened, like calls came in about this, there's, erosion underneath. What are you guys doing?
I can see it from my house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's no question. No question about it.
All right, any other items? Good. Thank you, everyone, for this long meeting tonight. My intention is to not have long meetings like this anymore.
You have more.
I know. I wasn't asking questions first here. Yes, and I'll second the motion to close the hearing. All in favor by voice?
yes.
Yeah, meeting is closed. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.